What's up, everyone? We are diving back into the multiverse today for another epic. What if Naruto was exiled and claimed harem with Hinata, Temari, Yugito Kagura Mai Terumi Karui Yugito Samui Yugao Kuranai Anko Tayuya Fu Temari, Part 3. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Kuranai vs. Tayuya. Tayuya groaned as she pulled herself out of the building she had been unexpectedly kicked into. She had definitely not expected to be hit so hard from the red-eyed woman. Fucking bitch. Felt like I got hit by that Tsunade bitch of a Hokage. Eventually out she looked ahead to see the same woman ready for a fight. How the fuck did you kick that hard? She said, rubbing her jaw. Kuranai grinned, a very unlike Kuranai grin, and said, I've been training in my chakra control so that I can gather it at one point and release it all at once, like how Hokage-sama can do it. Unfortunately I haven't completed it yet, but it works for now. Tayuya scowled at the woman, realizing this wouldn't be as easy as she first thought. Fortunately she had upped her training in taijutsu herself and became very proficient in the art, as well as kenjutsu, something had to learn after gaining her katana. Well then, this won't be as boring as I thought it would be. She said, unsheathing her katana. By bending it on an angle she was able to get a light on it to reflect into Kuranai's eyes, temporarily blinding her, allowing her to shoot forward. When her sight returned to her a second later, Kuranai found a blade heading for her neckline. Acting quickly she brought her kunai up to block the sword strike, but to her shock she was pushed several feet. Tayuya brought her foot up to kick Kuranai once she stopped, only for it to be blocked by the raven head's arm, who then grabbed her wrist and twisted it, but Tayuya's flexibility allowed her to unwind herself and flip over the woman. Tayuya, now facing Kuranai's back, aimed a kick and successfully made contact, sending the woman flying, but due to her own flexibility, Kuranai was able to place her hand on the ground and flipping herself upright. Tayuya put her hand into a seal and called out, Tsuchi Bunshin no Jutsu. Mud gathered from the ground as it formed into an identical copy before they both went through hand seals. Futon. Daitapa. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. Both jutsu merged halfway, causing it enlarge by at least 3 times its size due to the wind augmenting the fireball, making an almost mini-sized sun that was sent barreling towards Kuranai. Kuranai, thinking hastily, flew through hand seals before slamming the ground. Sweden. Heron Bansho. All of a sudden a high torrent of water fell from the sky, crashing into the fireball, extinguishing it after some time, causing the area to be filled with steam. Holding her palm facing forward, Kuranai started to gather the water from the moisture in the air and whispered, Sweden. Suihachi. A high stream pressured jet of water shot from her hand right through the steam, blowing it away and on course for Tayuya. Tayuya, seeing the water coming at her, dove out of the way only to witness the jet of water cut through the building that was behind her like a knife through butter. Jumping away from the water that now seemed to follow her, she turned to face Kuranai and called out her own jutsu. Futon. Repusho. Just like with Kuranai, a high-pressured gale force wind blew from Tayuya's hand straight at Kuranai, who was unable to cancel her jutsu in time and was therefore blown back from the blow, landing in a heap. Getting up from the ground with a groan as her arm and hand had been cut from the fall as well as her forehead, she looked up to see the redhead walking towards her. Flipping up, she threw some shuriken and kunai at her, only for her to bat them away with her katana. Damn, she's good with that. If I want to have a better chance, I need my own katana. It must be horrible to be on the edge of defeat and not know it. Tayuya said with a smirk as she stopped a good distance from Kuranai. You think you have me beat? It's your overconfidence that will get you killed. Kuranai said with a frown. Tayuya chuckled as she grasped her katana, causing the wind to pick up in the area. I'm not overconfident about anything, I'm just telling it as it is. The wind picked up more ferociously, making Kuranai have to put her arm up to block it from getting to her eyes. All of a sudden the wind stopped, making a single sound before Tayuya said, Futobase, Tachikas, blow it away. Earth-severing wind. A second later an explosion of wind ripped out of Tayuya, blowing everything apart, even causing Kuranai to stumble back a bit. The wind started to shrink in as it gathered around Tayuya and her newly transformed sword, which had gone from a katana to a combat knife with a black guard and small ring on the hilt's blunt edge. You have a zanpakuto? Kuranai asked in shock. Tayuya chuckled and started spinning the knife on her finger. Yep. Just like your boy back there, and maybe that other redhead, I didn't get a good feel of her weapon, but that doesn't matter, you're going to die here. Tayuya stopped spinning the knife and grasped it in her hand and brought wind around it before swinging forward, creating what looked like two whips of wind to cut through the floor either side of Kurenai, ripping chunks out of the ground. What was that? Kurenai gasped out in shock at the display of power. Tachika's is a wind-based Zanpakuto. It allows me to create and release transparent blades of wind which cut enemies from a distance. And what's better is that, there is no limit to the amount, now prepare to die. Tayuya shouted out as she swung the knife multiple of times, sending waves of wind at Kurenai, who for the first time in her life felt true fear rush through her blood. No, can't die here, there's so much I have to do, so much to say. I wanted to be with Naruto, help him rebuild his clan. Be there for him when he needed, help Anko out with her problems, be the sister she never had. I can't die here, I won't die here. She screamed to herself in her head. And if by some miracle, everything stopped in place, completely frozen before she blacked out. Mindscape. Waking up groggily, she couldn't tell where she was when all of a sudden everything came back to her, causing her to jump in haste and look around for the redhead when instead of seeing Konoha and fighting going on, she found herself stood in what looked like a traditional Japanese garden, cherry blossom trees all in a ring around a good-sized field of grass with a large pond in the center with a bird pool in the center. All in all, it looked beautiful to her. But the question she now wanted to know was what the hell happened. You're here at last. A feminine voice that sounded calm and peaceful spoke out. Looking around, she spotted a woman by the pond looking at her, only to turn back to the pond as if watching her. The woman was, for one thing, beautiful. She wore an elegant blue kimono that looked like it would be worn in a formal gathering. She had an impressive bust that matched her own, and a gentle tan face that screamed beautiful. Her eyes were pink, and she had black hair like her own but tied back while wearing red lipstick. Where am I? Kurenai asked the woman. The woman seemed to ignore her and motioned for her to come over, which she did reluctantly. The woman that was now stood beside her spoke up. Look into the pond and tell me what you see. Kurenai looked into the pond and could see the fight that had just happened leading up to the point she was going to die, completely shocking her. Do you know why you are going to die? She asked Kurenai, who blinked at the question. Because I'm weaker than her. She said simply, causing the woman to chuckle. God heavens no, you're much stronger than you think. How do you think you ended up here? She asked rhetorically. No, the reason you will die is because you fear death, fear of making a mistake in the time of need, and fear taking chances. What does that have to do with anything? She asked with a confused frown. If you fear death, then you will die sooner than later. With your fear of dying, it caused you to freeze up when those blades of wind were coming at you. Had you have had no fear, you would be able to think fast and use a technique to defend yourself, or at least lesion the blow. Because of your of making a mistake, it slows down your brain as it tries to rationalize for what to do. You tend to overthink situations, which can only end up even worse. And by fearing taking chances, it stops you from getting to where you want to be, stopping all actions that you could take to make the situation at hand better. Take Naruto for example. If you had no fear of chances, you would have had say with him already. The woman explained before she started to smirk at the end while Kurenai blushed. Kurenai sighed and closed her eyes in thought. When she thought about it, the only reason she feared death was because she lost her father and mother fighting the Kyuubi 18 years ago. Then as she grew older, more people seemed to die until it led to Asuma, one of her best friends, who stuck by her. That was when it struck worse. It was also the same with making a mistake, as she didn't want to end up like Asuma and her parents. Opening her eyes, they fell on the pond as she saw her terrified face as the blades were coming in fast, and couldn't believe how stupid she was. In that time she could perform a Suiten jutsu to block the blades to slow them down, jumped out of the way and attacked Tayuya. Looking at the woman, she gave a nod. You're right. I need to face my fears. The woman seemed to smile at that. And how will you do that? First of all, I'll go back down there and do anything I can to stop that attack from reaching me. I will face it head on. Second, I'll think fast and act fast before she even has the opportunity to save herself. She won't know what hit her. And after all this is over, I don't care where Naruto is, the hospital, his apartment, hell, on the street, but I will have say with him. She said with a smirk. The woman also chuckled and smiled gently. Very good, I'm glad to see you're not a coward after all. Of course, after all, What Zanpakuto wants a partner who is afraid of dying? She asked rhetorically while the woman's eyes widen. You knew I was your Zanpakuto? She asked in shock. Kurenai chuckled and smiled. Naruto-kun has told me all about Zanpakutos, how when you're about to die they bring you into your mindscape to test you to see if you're worthy of being their new wielder. Oh, and also that whoever wields a Zanpakuto is part Shinigami. I gotta say I expected myself to be part Shinigami. Correct, and you pass, she said with a smile as Kurenai looked shocked. Oh, don't look shocked, it isn't a good look, she said with a smirk while Kurenai spluttered. Anyway, here is your new Zanpakuto, she said as she held out her hand where a katana appeared in it. Looking it over, she noticed how its only decoration is the tsuba, which is a hexagon instead of a rectangle. The two sides parallel to the blade are long, whereas the four sides above and below the blade are shortened, making it into almost a diamond or prism-like shape. It has a green handle. To her it looked beautiful as it seemed to radiate power unlike anything she has ever felt before. Touch the Zanpakuto, and you will know how to wield me, she paused as Kurenai reached over. Oh, by the way, my name is Kyoka Suigetsu. And just like that, Kurenai was gone from her mindscape and back in the real world. Real world. Opening her yes, everything started to come into focus when she felt the katana in her hand. All the information seemed to flood her mind as she grasped the Zanpakuto it tightly before bringing it up to her face and whispered. Kudakero, Kyoka Suigetsu, Shatter, Mirror Flower, Water Moon. Time resumed as normal as the blades of wind flew at Kurenai. It ripped through her, causing her limbs to be blown off, organs to be ripped to shreds and blood to be poured all over the place. Sighing, Tayuya shut her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered to herself until she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Kurenai stood there with her Zanpakuto, completely unharmed. Sorry about what? Anko and Yugao. Anko looked like a kid in a candy store as she was surrounded by Oto Nin. It was quite a shame they didn't know who they were dealing with, as it looked like they thought she was a useless woman. Oh, how wrong they were. Who to pick? So many choices and yet I can't decide, Anko said with a pout. Yugao, who was stood back to back with her, quirked an eyebrow. What the hell are you talking about? Anko looked over her shoulder at her and smirked. Oh, just which one to kill first? I mean, there's so many. I don't want the others to feel jealous that I didn't want them first. Yugao's eyebrow twitched at that comment. I doubt they care if they were killed first or not, she snapped at her fellow purple-haired friend. Anko shrugged her shoulders. You never know, there may be some here who are masochists, and with them working for Orochi Tem, you could never be too sure, she said casually, making Yugao and the Oto Nin to sweat drop. Getting annoyed, and Oto Nin yelled. For crying out loud, just attack us. Wrong thing to say because Anko whirled around on him. See, I told you. He's a masochist, she said, grinning triumphantly before she charged forward, kunai in hand at the one who shouted. Upon reaching him, she dove for him, driving the kunai through his head, destroying his brain as they hit the ground with her on top. Flipping off the now dead shinobi, she ran at another, flipped over him and drove a kunai in the back of his head before jumping off of him and throwing two kunais at two Oto Nin, running at them, killing them. As she landed on the ground, she spun around facing a group of 5 shinobi facing her. Time to go, bye-bye boys. Flipping through hand seals, she called out. Kaden. Hisekisho. Spewing a large amount of ask out of her mouth, it drifted over to the enemy, completely encasing them before she grinned, and with a simple clink of the teeth that had a flint on them, and the area exploded in an array of fire and screams as the explosion tore the shinobi apart. On the other side of the field, Yugao was dodging in and out of the hailstorm of kunai and shuriken that was launched at her from a large group of shinobi that tried to hit her. Going through hand seals, she called out. Sweden. Sujinheki. Just by using the moisture in the air, a wall of water was formed right in front of her that started receiving the attacks of kunai and shuriken. She then raised her Zanpakuto in front of her and turned it in a circle counterclockwise. While she was turning it, chakra exploded out of her, causing the air to become cold and fog to roll in, as her eyes started to glow an ethereal white. Mei. Soda no Shirayuki. As the dust settled, it revealed her Zanpakuto having changed to where the blade, hilt and tsuba turn completely white. The tsuba becomes a hollow snowflake-like circle, and a white ribbon forms from the pommel from the end of the handle. Looking up, she noticed how her chakra had caused the water wall to turn to ice, just perfect. Yugao gathered chakra and punctured the ground in front of her, once creating a large ice circle below her feet. Bringing her Zanpakuto down again, she punctured the ground 4 more times in a semicircle. Taking a battle stance with Soda no Shirayuki pointing forward, the ice from the wall started to crumble as it was towards the edge of the blade, as well as the ice particles from the protrusions she made in the ground. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren. A second later she let it all go in an attack of massive, powerful pure white wave of ice from Soda no Shirayuki's blade. The attack blew past whatever ice had been left from the wall and completely enveloped the field in front of her, encasing all enemy shinobi in their places. Swinging Soda no Shirayuki, once a large slash appeared in the newly formed ice before cracks started to outline from it until it completely shattered, leaving nothing but ice dust left to flow to the ground. Looking ahead, she saw a group of shinobi run at Anko from behind and snarled, stabbing Soda no Shirayuki into the ground. Ice stared to cover the area as she called out. Juhaku. Ice shot along the ground towards the shinobi, stopping them in place as the ice started to grow up their bodies, causing them to freak out until they were nothing but statues. Taking Soda no Shirayuki from the ground, the people shattered once more. Looking at Anko once more to make sure she was alright, she unprepared to see large white bone sword to be heading straight for her, which she was looking at in wide eyes as it came closer. Using what speed she had left, she ran towards it, even though she knew it was a futile attempt. She wasn't fast enough. She had no jutsu or techniques that would reach it fast enough. She could only hope for a miracle. As Anko watched the bone blade come at her faster, her whole life flashed before her eyes, losing her parents to the Kyuubi attack, becoming a student or Orochimaru, and finally feeling accepted. Then the feeling of betrayal as Orochimaru gave her the cursed mark seal, leaving her for dead, being ostracized for the rest of her life. Then the good bits, meeting a friend like Kurenai and Yugao, joining Anbu, working with Ibiki, and then Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, her latest topic of discussion. Just as it was about to reach her, Sand came out of nowhere and grabbed the bone blade before throwing it in the opposite direction. Anko turned around to see Gaara. The cage stood with his arms crossed and a neutral expression on his face before he turned to Anko. Mitarashi-san, I advise you to get away from here for your own safety. It is now my turn. Anko, despite wanting to protest, but gave in and gave a nod. She knew how he fought, and her being in the way didn't suit her fine, although she knew he wouldn't attack a comrade, not anymore thanks to Naruto. Meeting up with Yugao, who looked shocked, she said, "Come on, there's no longer any Oto Nin anywhere." Yugao simply gave a nod and sheathed Soda no Shirayuki. "Right, we should meet up with Naruto-kun," she said before they both ran off. Gaara stared into the forest as if waiting for something before he called out, "Show yourself, Kimimaro Kagaya." A second later, the Kagaya was across from him. "How you survived I don't know, but you will not survive here today," he said, calling up his Sand. Gaara vs. Kimimaro. Kagura looked at Gaara with a small smirk on his face. His mind was filled with nothing but revenge at his last defeat at the hands of this young man who stood before him. "This time I will kill you without fail," Kimimaro said with narrowed eyes. "If you think I will be defeated, then you are mistaken," Gaara said as he stood there. "Enough talk, you will die here today," Kimimaro exclaimed as he lifted both of his hands up and pointed them at Gaara before calling out, "Teshi Senden." Immediately a barrage of what looked like bone bullets fired from his fingers at Gaara. As the bullets came closer to Gaara, his Sand instinctively went to act as a shield in front of him by building a wall, stopping the bullets as they hit it with tremendous force that would usually break it, but thanks to using chakra in the Sand, it has made it more durable. "You'll have to do better than that, Kimimaro Kagura," Gaara said as he placed his hands in a seal. Sabaku Q. Using the Sand from the wall, it rushes over to Kimimaro and wraps around his feet, pinning him to the ground while tying his arms in the air to stop him from moving completely. "You think this will stop me?" Kimimaro asked while laughing. Suna Shiger. A cloud of sand then appeared overhead before it starting volley bullet-like bits of sand at Kimimaro. As soon the bullets impacted him, they would simply hit his skin and drop down, making Gaara frown. "Ever since you left me for dead, I had been cured of my illness, which now allows me to use my full power. There is nothing that can penetrate my skin anymore, and I am invincible," Kimimaro said with a bit of a manic gleam in his eyes. Whatever happened to him had made him more unstable. "I have to stop this as soon as I can." Rendon. Suna Shiger. The sand cloud above expanded to fill a large part of the sky as it rained down bullets on Kimimaro, which were now much more dense and sharp, but to no avail once more. Kimimaro, getting bored, started to sprout him bones. Karamatsu no Mai. Bones sprouted out at every possible place on his body, allowing him to cut free of the sand before setting his sights on Gaara, who was now getting ready for a real fight. Kimimaro started to charge at Gaara, who used his sand to send tendrils at him only to have them knocked away or sliced through. Brining his hands up, Gaara called on a large amount of sand only to bring them down, bringing the sand down on Kimimaro as he turned the sand to rock, solidifying it in place. To Gaara's surprise, however, the rocks started getting cracks along them before it shattered, revealing an unharmed Kimimaro who just looked annoyed. "How many times will I have to tell you that? Me," he said, punctuating each word as he started to change by using the cursed seal of earth. His skin went from pale white to dark gray, 6 large bone spines protruded out of his back, and grew a long bone-spiked tail. Kimimaro then reached behind his back and pulled out his spinal column and made it into a makeshift spear as he started twirling it around before getting in a stance. Gaara held out his right hand as he gathered what looked like stronger material from the earth, making it gather in his hand. Just as they started to take shape, Gaara said, "Psycho Zatai Kogeki. Shukaku no Hoko." The sand then formed a shape of what looked like a large halberd with the end part in the shape of Shukaku's claw. "Even if Shukaku isn't sealed within me anymore, he will always be a part of who I am," he said as he brought the spear back behind him, also getting in a stance. Both shinobi, the Kazekage and the last Kagaya known to man, charged at each, bringing their weapons down on one another and started an intense duel of staff weapons as they pounded each other relentlessly, never letting up. A few minutes later, Kimimaro got a lucky shot and swung his spear in an arc and watched as it struck in the cheek, causing his skin to break apart, only for the spear go right through the head as the entire body fell to sand, revealing it to be a Sunabunshin. Spinning around, he just watched in time as the halberd was thrown at him, but believing that it would break apart, just stood there, and then watched horrified as it pierced him straight through, causing him to revert back to normal while he started to gurgle on his blood and bile rising from his throat. "Your arrogance has led to your defeat, Kimimaro Kagaya," Gaara said as walked towards him as sand wrapped around Kimimaro's feet and turned to solid rock, keeping him there. "How have you done this? It shouldn't be possible," Kimimaro screamed in rage. Gaara just coasted an eyebrow at his anger, shrugging. "When I use the jutsu, I gather all the strongest materials in the area and bring them together, resulting in my halberd. It took some time getting used to using it, but I eventually got the hang of it. If you think this will kill me, then you are mistaken. I know that won't kill you, but I am not finished yet." Gaara then lifted his hands a bit as sand rose and created a dome around Kimimaro. Going through hand seals, Gaara called out, "Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu." A large fireball blew out of his mouth and made contact with the dome of sand, but instead of the ball exploding, Gaara fed it chakra, making it like a flamethrower as the flames started to surround the dome completely. After a minute, Gaara stopped the jutsu, letting the smoke to move away, revealing a now glass dome. "Learning some elemental jutsu from Naruto really paid off and saved me some time. This is how you will die. While you may have indestructible bones, what about your internal organs?" Gaara asked and watched as Kimimaro's face became horrified. "No, you can't do this to me. I must live. I must complete my goals and serve Orochimaru-sama," Kimimaro screamed out in rage and fear. "And that is why you will die." Gaara watched as after a minute Kimimaro had ran out of hair and was now choking. By using a Kaden jutsu, he had not only turned the sand dome to glass but burned away the oxygen to kill him quicker. Gaara, knowing for sure Kimimaro was dead, used his power over the earth to grab his body and pulled him into the earth while he broke the dome apart, but with more difficulty as he wasn't able to control glass as well as his sand. Seeing the battlefield clear of enemies, Gaara walked away. "Now to make sure Naruto does what needs to be done for the sake of us all," he said as he vanished into sand, which blew in the direction of Naruto and Sasuke. East Gate. Tsunade and Jiraiya vs. Orochimaru. Tsunade sent a punch at Orochimaru, who ducked under it, jabbed her waist, causing her to flinch from the strength behind it, which surprised her. Jiraiya then came at the snake with a kick to ribs, which knocked him away, but because of his inhuman flexibility, he was able to flip himself up. "Don't you see? You two will never win. It has always been this way between us, and it will never change," he said, grinning with bloodlust. "Yes, Things have changed, Orochimaru. We were teammates, hell even best friends, and you left the village for what? Power. To learn how to become invincible. And at what cost? Your humanity. Your very own sanity. There is no point in even living if you spend it all being alone. Growled out Jiraiya, his temper flaring the more he spoke. You know nothing of the pain I have felt. The pain of losing your parents before your very eyes. Are you serious? I lost my brother and fiancé in the war. I was unable to save either of them. They died in my arms, and you say I don't know pain. I am the only one left of my family. So don't you dare preach to me about loss. Tsunade screamed with anger at having to bring up old memories. I lost the boy I saw as a son at the hands of the Kyuubi as he gave his life away to save the people who would later harm his son. Because of my own selfish actions, I let Naruto be harmed and hated by this village, all because I couldn't stand to be here anymore. You're not the only one who knows about pain and loss. Jiraiya said, more subdued, but the anger was still there. Enough. I am tired with talking. Nothing you say will ever change my mind. Now prepare to die, Orochimaru said as went through hand signs. Sine Tajishu. Large snakes shot out from Orochimaru's sleeve, heading straight for Jiraiya, who had already got a jutsu to counter. Jiraiya ran at the snakes with his right palm held out as chakra gathered before he thrust his hand forward. Rasengan. The ball of pure chakra tore through the snakes as he carried on running at Orochimaru. To Jiraiya's shock and horror, Orochimaru held out his right hand as dark chakra seemed to gather before forming what looked like the Rasengan with two spinning rings around it. Running at Jiraiya, Orochimaru held out his hand before thrusting forward. Chokasaken. Rasengan. Both orbs clashed and grinded against each other, causing chakra to lash out from the output when all of a sudden, boom, both Sannin were flung backwards but recovered easily, landing on both feet. Both looked up and what they saw shocked them as they saw the large crater they had just formed. Jiraiya looked up in shock at Orochimaru's face. What the hell was that? It looked the Rasengan. It was more like a variant version made out of my own rather darker chakra. Orochimaru said with a smirk at seeing the face on his ex-teammate. Is that all you can do? Steal other people's hard work for your own? You're pathetic. You're lower than the scum of this planet. Jiraiya snarled at Orochimaru. Throughout all of this, Orochimaru seemed to have forgotten that was one more Sannin on the playing field, and she was less than happy with the situation she and Jiraiya was in, never mind the whole village. No matter what, they had to win, for the entire village. Running forward at high speed, Tsunade jumped up high into the air above Orochimaru and brought her heel down just as he looked up with wide eyes. Sudankyaku. Orochimaru barely slithered away as Tsunade's heel hit the ground, causing a large explosion as the ground itself caved in, creating a giant crater while destroying buildings in the vicinity. Tsunade wasn't done, however, as she turned in the snake's direction and punched at the ground with all her strength. Just like before, the ground crumbled under her strength, but this time the ground grew cracks that sped up to Orochimaru's position, where it then split the earth open into a ravine. Orochimaru just barely jumped up in time to dodge the fall. Even in her old age, she hasn't lost an ounce of her strength. I need to be more careful. I'm underestimating them too much. It's time I stopped playing around. As Orochimaru landed back on land, he crouched down low so that his chest touched the floor. Mandara no Jin. Orochimaru then, to the shock of the two Sannin, released a torrent of countless snakes from his mouth, forming a wall of snakes. The snakes started to then rise and rush towards the Hokage and Sage, knocking everything in its path out of the way. The snakes all opened their mouths to extend Kusanagi-like blades. Holy shit, Jiraiya said with a shocked look. What the hell? Tsunade hasped as the torrents of snakes were non-stop. Flipping through hand seals, Jiraiya slammed his hands on the ground. Doden. Yomi Numa. The ground in between him and snakes turned in a large swamp that started to trap the snakes in them, but not enough. They started to plow over it. Once more going through hand seals, he shouted. Kuchio's no jutsu. A large cloud of smoke blanketed the area as Jiraiya and Tsunade were raised from the ground up to about 40 feet in the air. The smoke soon vanished, revealing the Toad boss Gamabunta. What? Jiraiya, what the hell have you summoned me for now? He demanded with an angry tone as he looked up into the rare serious face of his summoner. Jiraiya simply pointed forward. Konoha is under another invasion by Orochimaru, and we need your help to get rid of those he said as Gamabunta finally turned to stare at the large group of snakes. Very well, I'll let you off this time. Gamabunta said begrudgingly. Even he knew that Orochimaru was no one to mess about with and it was time to turn serious. Bunta, give me some oil. Jiraiya ordered. Right. Gamayuden. Gamabunta's cheeks bulged out before shooting a large quantity of oil at snakes while Jiraiya called out his own jutsu. Kaden. Enden. He shouted as he shot stream of fire from his mouth down onto the oil. Kaden. Gamayu Enden. Both voices rung out as the two jutsus combined, creating an inferno of unmatched heat as it rained down on the poor snakes, who screamed out in agony as one by one they were turned to nothing but dead skin on the ground. Tsunade looked at the attack and smirked. That's that taken care of. Now I think I should bring out the big guns myself, she said as she jumped from Gamabunta over to the empty space beside him. Kuchio's no jutsu. Placing her hand down on the thin air as if there was something to touch, a large poof signaled the arrival of another summon as the Slug Queen, Katsuyu, appeared in all her glory. Katsuyu, I need your help. We're being invaded by Orochimaru once more, Tsunade told her summon as she landed on her head. I see, then I will lend you my services, Tsunade-sama, Katsuyu said calmly. Thank you, Tsunade said respectively. Orochimaru now stood fully and looked up at the two large summons with hate. I see, so that's how it's gotta be, huh? Going through the same hand seals, he slammed his hands into the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. Once more the signs for a large summon appeared in a large cloud of smoke that obscured Orochimaru's vision before it dissipated, revealing the large purple skin of the King of Snakes, Manda. Orochimaru, how dare you summon me? I should destroy you where you stand, Manda bellowed. Oh, Orochimaru said in an innocent tone. And here I thought you would like the opportunity to finally kill Gamabunta and Katsuyu. Manda looked ahead to see the two large summons. Humph, very well, but I want 100 sacrifices as soon as this over. Orochimaru smirked with maliciousness. Of course, I already have them ready. Gamabunta looked up at Jiraiya with a serious gaze. Where is Naruto? Wouldn't he usually be fighting this guy with you? Gamabunta had always held great respect for Naruto, more so than he held for Jiraiya, had respected him even more after he learned he held the Rinnegan, as he knew that not just anyone would receive those eyes, but only the person to change the world, for better or worse. Jiraiya looked off to the distance where he could sense the battle between Naruto and Sasuke. He's fighting with Sasuke Uchiha, to the death this time. I see, then we better hurry up so we can help him, Gamabunta said with a serious face as he returned to look at Snake before jumping up and pulling his dagger out. Let's go, Katsuyu. Hi, the Slug Queen replied as they drove forward. Team 8 and Temari. Shikyaku no Jutsu, Kiba called out as he dropped to his fours while his canine teeth and finger and toenails grew to claw-like length, his eyes also become wilder. Jujin Bunshin. Akamaru transformed into a clone of Kiba and jumped on his back in the exact same manner that Kiba was crouched, only he seemed more feral with being a dog in reality. Let's see how you guys like us now, Kiba exclaimed in glee as he saw Oto Nin rushing at him. Gatsuga. Both master and partner jumped high in the air as they started to spin at unbelievable speeds before firing themselves at the enemy in what like a drill tornado. Reaching the enemy forces, the two drill tornadoes tore through the enemy ranks, lowering the numbers the more they went until they stopped by skidding along the ground. Man, these guys are pathetic. Don't speak too soon, dog boy. Temari's voice rung out as she saw more shinobi heading for Kiba. Bringing her fan back, she swung at the enemy. Okamedachi. Temari released heavy air currents that started to collide together to create many vacuum pockets to slash at her targets, which ripped them to shreds. Now that's how it's done. Temari swung around to see shinobi heading for her. Biting her thumb, she started to bleed, which then she used to wipe on the fan before swinging it and calling out. Kuchio's. Kurikiri Mai. Out of then came her summoned weasel Kamatari, a one-eyed sickle-holding weasel. The fan whips up a tempest, which Kamatari then rides the wind, slashing through everything it touches. The swirling winds started to rip up trees, boulders, and other forms of debris. The tempest ran on for several hundred meters, cutting down the enemy who stood helpless on the battlefield. Now that's how it's done, she quipped as she looked at the blood-covered ground that was littered with dead shinobi. Shino, who was facing his own enemy, stared down at them as if he was their lord while he kept his hand in his pockets. It would be foolish if you chose fight me. Why? Because you will not survive once I strike, he said with his monotone voice. Ha, you think you scare us? An Oto nin shouted arrogantly. Yeah, you're nothing but a Konoha puss. Another shouted. If that is your decision, very well, Shino said as he lifted his arms out of his pockets while bugs swarmed behind him, freaking everyone out. The bugs from around Shino flew at the enemy who tried to fight them off, but any attempt at doing so was dodged as the bugs just flew around the weapon and jutsus fired at them. The bugs then started to cover the shinobi, completely tapping them by covering every inch of their body. Haijutsu. Mushidama. Slowly and ever so painfully, the bugs fed off of the chakra from the shinobi, slowly killing them for every second that went by. When all of a sudden there was no sound, no cries of pain, nothing, the bugs then seemed to crash into one another before flying away, showing nothing, no bodies, no blood, absolutely nothing. The bugs had completely decimated the person they had a hold of, drinking their chakra and blood, eating everything away. Holding his right hand out to more enemies, he mentally ordered his bugs to attack them as he called out. Kill them, he ordered, and as if understanding, the bugs once more drained the shinobi of everything, and leaving nothing. Hinata stared at her enemies in front of her with nothing but hate, a most unusual thing when it came to the kind and gentle Hinata. Ever since she had started to train hard after Naruto's banishment, she had become a cold person when fighting, very much like Neji, calm, collective, not showing any emotion, perfect when fighting with Byakugan. Now she had to prove to her friends and allies that she is a kunoichi worthy of the title by destroying those who want to kill her friends and destroy her home. Closing her eyes for a second, they snapped open a second later. Byakugan. Veins bulged on the side her eyes as her bloodline was activated for everyone to see. Running slowly at the enemy, she soon sped up until the point that she practically appeared on front of them with Juken strikes to the heats, instantly killing them. Spinning around every once in a while, she repeated the action, slowly lowering the numbers as she moved at a speed that Kiba would be jealous of. Just as she was about to strike once more, an Oto nin shouted out. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. Quickly turning around, she watched as large fireball was heading her way. Forcing chakra out of all of her chakra points, she started to slowly spin until she called out. Hakusho Kaden. And just like that, a large blue dome of chakra formed around her as she spun so fast she nothing but a blur to everything else. Stopping as the fireball had evaporated, she regained her stance only to see 10 shinobi in front of her. You're in my field of divination, preparing to die. Hake Rokujuyun Sho. 2 Palm. Appearing in front of 2 shinobi, she struck out at their hearts, killing them. 4 Palm. Appearing in front of 2 more, she repeated her action. 8 Palm. 1 more gone added to the list. 16 Palm. Another 3 were dropped as they was hit 16 times. 32 Palm. 32 strikes left the poor man like a vegetable as he dropped to the ground. 64 Palm. Appearing in front of the last one, she completely decimated him, leaving him for dead as he was blasted back on the last palm strike to the chest. Stopping to catch her breath, she turned to see her team looking at her in shock, awe and respect. All right, Hinata. Kiba cheered on. Most impressive, Hinata, Shino said with a nod. Temari smirked. I knew there was something about you I liked, she said with a chuckle before turning serious. I'm gonna go help Sakura. She looks like she's having a tough time. She, while getting nods from all 3. Be careful, Temari-san, Hinata said with a gentle voice while Temari gave her a smirk and left the field. We should head for the direction of Naruto-san. There are no longer any Oto shinobi in the area, Shino said. Right. Let's go, Kiba said with enthusiasm. Sakura vs. Fubuki. I thought you died, Sakura said as she eyed her opponent, who she and the rest of team had concluded to be dead. Fubuki smirked, and it was a smirk that freaks the hell out of her. I was left for dead, but I never died. Orochimaru-sama found me and gave me reason to live, gave me I always wanted, power, she said with a grin. And I'm the lucky one to have to face you, Sakura asked with sarcasm. Fubuki frowned in thought for a moment. Well, I had always wanted to get that Uchiha prick back for what he did to me, but he's Orochimaru's toy now, off limits I guess, she said with a shrug. Sakura sighed and pulled her gloves on tighter before getting in a stance. Then I'll finish the job here and now, she said as charged forward, aiming a punch for the girl only for her to backflip out of the way. Sakura ended up punching the ground, causing it be ripped up from underneath her as rock and rubble was blown sky high. Nice punch, a voice to her right said as she was blown away from a kick to the ribs. But you'll have to do better than that if you intend on beating me. Looking up from her down position, she glared at the smirking pink-haired bitch. Damn it, I underestimated her. I need to stop doing that. Believe me, I plan on it. Punching the ground once more, rocks were blown upwards, obscuring Fubuki's vision of Sakura. Sakura appeared on the left side of Fubuki and kicked her in the side, causing her to cry out in pain from the sound of cracked rib. Running after the woman, she grabbed her foot and swung her around with all her strength before letting go, making the woman be thrown into a building which collapsed on her. Fubuki, who was trying to get up, groaned as she held her side from the impact that kick had caused, never mind the building on top of her. Damn bitch. As soon as I get out of here, I'll kill her good and slow. As she lifted the last heavy bit off of her, she stood up and glared at Sakura full of hate. Get ready to die, bitch. Going through hand seals, the ice user shouted out. Hyoten. Haru Moko. The air around them suddenly got cold as a tiger formed out of ice appeared on the field with yellow glowing eyes. Fubuki then mentally commanded that the tiger attack Sakura, which caused it growl before running at amazing speed at the other pink-haired woman, ready to tear her limb from limb. Sakura simply stared at the tiger as it got closer while she gathered the necessary chakra in her feet to allow her to use a technique Tsunade had taught her that would eventually become needed. How right she was. Lifting her leg up for a moment, she slammed it into the ground. Sudankyaku. A large formed from the kick, which ended up destroying the ice tiger as it shattered from the impact. The explosion also nearly knocked Fubuki off her feet, but luckily she jumped back just in time to dodge getting damaged more than she should have. Of course, she didn't expect for Sakura to appear in front of her straight away after that and punch her, sending her crashing through building and out the other side only to hit a wall. Standing up on shaky legs, black marks started to grow over her body while flashing purple every now and then, causing her chakra and presence itself to become darker and colder. You have the cursed mark? Sakura asked in disgust from on top of the building that Fubuki crashed through. Yes, I'm going to kill you with. All of a sudden, claws grew on her hands and feet while her skin turned a gray-purple, her hair changed to a violet color while lengthening. Her eyes turned yellow while horns grew out of the top of her head as her muscles bulged slightly. Running at the building in her new form, she punched it. At what shocked Sakura now was the entire building exploded from the strength of Fubuki. Fubuki then appeared in front of Sakura, who had jumped from the explosion, and kicked her in the side, throwing her to the ground in a crater. As Fubuki was coming down, she was unable to get to her target as someone shouted. Kamedachi no Jutsu. Wind started to wrap around her before making what looked like a tornado as many wind blades cut into her skin, ripping her apart while her cursed seal healed almost straight away until suddenly she thrown away. Landing in front of Sakura was Temari, who helped her up. What are you doing here? Sakura asked, confused while she stood up. We finished our guys and you look like you could use help over here. Temari said with a shrug before looking at the newly recovered Fubuki, who stepped closer to them. Well, now I get to kill 2 people. I feel like it's my birthday. Fubuki said with sadistic glee. Something is seriously fucked with her. Temari said with a grimace. Gee, I think. Sakura asked sarcastically, be carrying on. Can you keep her held in one place for me? Sure. Temari said with a shrug. Fusajin no Jutsu. Temari said she swung her fan, which blew dust and sand at Fubuki. Unfortunately for her, this was no offensive jutsu but rather a distraction jutsu, as the sand and dirt got into her eyes, making her momentarily blind, but it was all the time Sakura needed as she appeared in front of the woman and used all of her strength and kicked her head clean off her shoulders. Ouch. Temari said with a small grimace at seeing a head lobbed off so easily. I didn't like it either. Sakura muttered before shaking her head. We should clean up here and go meet up with Naruto, no doubt their match is getting dangerous. Temari said with some worry. Right. Sakura said with a nod as they both went on their way to finish everyone off before their next destination. Westgate. Kakashi and Guy vs. Kabuto. Kakashi and Guy were stood in a small part of the village while Kabuto was stood across from them with that damn smirk plastered on his face as if he'd already won the fight. Doesn't this all seem familiar to you? Kabuto asked with a chuckle while fixing his glasses. The last you ran away, so if you're going to do that then yeah. Kakashi said with an eye smile. Come on Kakashi. Let's take care of this guy quickly so we can help the others. Guy said with a serious look in his eye, already knowing it won't be any easy battle. 8. Kakashi said as he pulled his headband showing his Sharingan for all to see. Flashing through hand seals at near blinding speed he called out. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. Kakashi blew out multiple fireballs that all shot at where Kabuto was, only have him dodge them while the fireballs impacted with the ground creating small explosions. Thanks to his Sharingan and natural reflexes he was able to duck in time for a kick to pass over him. Guy grabbed the leg that was above Kakashi and swung Kabuto into the ground only for the person to turn into mud. Nice show of strength, Kabuto said from on top of a building. But not good he wasn't able to finish as he soon found a fist planted in his gut courtesy of Guy, which caused him to cough up blood heavily. Guy then launched Kabuto up in the air and followed after him, only kick him in the stomach, bringing him back down to earth where Kakashi was waiting for him. As Kabuto came down he was only able to catch the image of a foot before he was sent flipping along the ground. Kabuto, thanks to his advanced healing, was able to pick himself up off the ground rather easily before chakra enveloped both of his hands in a glowing blue. Chakura no Mesu. Kabuto charged at Kakashi and entered a taijutsu match that put Kakashi to his limits. Kakashi, as he was fighting Kabuto in a very dangerous game of taijutsu, couldn't help but feel a slight worry in his gut. One mistake could be his last mistake, as with the chakra scalpels that Kabuto is using could cut an important artery within his body with no problem whatsoever and it would be game over. As Kakashi was just about counter Kabuto, the medic had feinted a slash with his left hand, causing Kakashi to dodge in the other direction where Kabuto's right hand was about to come into contact. Luckily for Kakashi, he has some realizable friends as Guy appeared in an instant and gave Kabuto an uppercut sending sky high. Are you alright Kakashi? Guy asked in his usual deep voice. Yeah thanks, that was close. Kakashi said as he looked up while going through hand seals and started to gather Raiden chakra in his right hand while his left hand grabbed the wrist of his right. Kakashi then jumped up after Kabuto, intending to kill him. As he came in close, he thrust his arm into Kabuto's stomach. Reikiri, he called out as the lightning struck Kabuto all over his insides, causing the man to scream in pain and agony as his insides were scorched and ripped apart. However, the cry of pain soon changed into a laugh so chilling that it froze Kakashi up to the core. Kabuto looked at Kakashi with a strange gleam in his eye that made Kakashi wonder what the hell was going on. Boom! Kabuto muttered as he blew up, blowing Kakashi away into a building. Kakashi! Guy screamed for his comrade as he jumped towards the building and started to lift Kakashi out of it. Are you alright? He asked once he was pulled out. Kakashi groaned but gave a nod. Yeah, just a little burnt here and there. I must congratulate you Kakashi and you Guy. Kabuto said up ahead of them. Oh really? And what's that? Kakashi asked with sarcasm. No one has pushed me that far before other than Orochimaru-sama and Naruto-kun. But I must take my leave right about now. You're not going anyway, Hai said as he was about to after him. You'll find that I am. Kabuto said with a smirk before vanishing. Damn it. Kakashi swore angrily. Come on. The others need our help. Guy said as he got a nod before they ran to help the others. Team Guy. Hakusho Kaden. Neji exclaimed as he used his clan's most prized jutsu, the ultimate defense, in order to knock the enemy away that had surrounded him, leaving them dead or knocked out. Running forward he struck every shinobi that came in view, and with someone who has the Byakugan and can see for miles, it was a lot of people. Spotting two shinobi about use jutsu he ran at them and thrust his palms out. Hake Kusho. Two vacuums of compressed air shout from Neji's palms, hitting the targets in the chest, blasting them against a wall, killing them by snapping their backs. These are weak and unworthy of even living. Neji said with a cold glare at the other shinobi. Even if we die, Orochimaru-sama will be the one who will destroy this pitiful village. An Oto Nin shouted. Oh really? And what makes you think he will even survive? Because he is a god, and no god can be killed. Another shouted. Neji shook his head at the man's stupidity. Even if he was a god, gods are always defeated by someone stronger. He said before he went into a stance ready to butcher the remaining shinobi he has to face. Hake Hyaku Nuhachi Sho. The enemy forces didn't stand a chance. 128 direct hits in all of their chakra points completely decimated them to be nothing more than limp bodies dead all over the village by the time he had finished. Should there ever be a god, I would put my money on Naruto-san. He said before going off to help everyone else. Neji had just arrived to the others to see Tenten slaughtering the enemy with all her assortments of weapons within her scrolls, and it looked like she a large smile on her face, enjoying what was happening. Tenten placed 2 small scrolls in the floor and placed her hands on them while saying, Kai. A second later and the 2 scrolls release smoke while also being sent flying and spinning into the air in the shape of 2 dragons made of smoke. So Shoryu. Tenten then jumped between the 2 scrolls, and starts to rapidly summon and throw all sort of weapons as a powerful barrage at the enemy below her who started to try and run away from the rain of weapons only for the all to fall to their deaths as explosive tags were attached to some weapons exploded on impact covering the area in a plume of smoke. As Tenten landed back on ground Neji smiled at her. Nice work Tenten. Tenten blushed at the praise before nodding and looking around. Where's Lee? They got their answer in a flash of green and shout of Konoha Senpu. The guy Lee faced didn't stand a chance, a couple well-placed quick kicks to the chest and another to the face complexly wiped him out. Lee then moved on to the next guy, and the next guy and so on and son before Neji or Tenten could even blink. Konoha Shofu. Lee slid underneath someone and kicked up with foot connecting with the guy's chin sending up to which he followed up into the air with Konoha Goriki Senpu. Lee then proceeded to beat the hell out of the guy before sending a kick to his face sending him back to the ground, breaking his neck. Landing back on ground he noticed Neji and Tenten watching him. Neji. Ten. Isn't this a perfect time to show these Oto nin what it's like to share the springtime of youth? He shouted enthusiastically with a pumping fist and fire in his eyes. If he keeps doing that we won't need to fight. Tenten whispered to Neji as she noticed some shinobi backing away and trying to flee from the green beast. I think you're right. However, just as the shinobi was gonna flee they were suddenly encased in what looked like purple crystals. Shoten. Amawatari no Jutsu. Looking at the shout they noticed a woman with blue spiky hair stamping the floor which caused pink crystals to shoot along it encasing the shinobi in crystal before shattering. Weak fools, you don't deserve to survive if you plan on running away. She said without emotion while turning to Team Guy. Let me guess, Tenten started. You work for Orochimaru. Only people who work for him would kill their subordinates. My name is Gurren, and yes I work for Orochimaru-sama, but they were not my subordinates, they were weak-minded fools who would run away from someone who is very strange indeed. She muttered finally seeing Lee before shaking her head. So you're a Shoten user as well huh? Neji asked with a raised eyebrow. As well, there is only one who can use it. Me. Gurren said angrily at this person who made it sound like more people could use it. Wrong. There is a friend of ours who can sue it. But I'm sure Orochimaru told you that right. I mean he wouldn't lie to you would he? Especially when this person is fighting Sasuke Uchiha right now. Tenten said with a smirk on her face. Gurren's eyes widened at hearing that as she always wanted to find someone who could use her bloodline, but she was never able to as Orochimaru said she was the last of kind who could which practically made her his weapon of sorts. At first she didn't mind working for him it gave her a purpose a reason to live, but over time she started to get tired of it all, just killing for no reason whatsoever. But if what they say is true, then maybe, just maybe there is someone who can make her feel like someone who actually deserves to live, and she had heard a lot about the Namikaze, about his strength, his connections to the Raikage and Mizukage. She knew if he wanted to, he could probably start the next great war, and win, with all of his connections. And yet he doesn't because he didn't need to, he doesn't want to, unlike a certain snake. Looking at the 3 faces she said, take me to him, if what you say is true then I want to see for my own eyes. Very well, Neji said as they all set off in Naruto's direction. Team 10 and Kankuro. Buban Baika no Jutsu. Choji exclaimed as his fist enlarged to about 4 times the size as he brought it down on an Oto nin killing him instantly, Lifting his arm back up, it returned to normal size as he saw the flattened shinobi beneath him. Running forward, he jumped up while shouting, Baika no Jutsu. Once he shouted it, his body turned into a large ball before he then shouted, Nikuden Sensha. As soon as he touched the ground, he started to spin into a large ball, crushing his enemies as he roared forward. Deciding to cause more damage, he called out, Nikuden Hari Sensha. Spike jutted out from his body all the way round, causing more damage towards the enemy before he came to a stop. That was too easy, he said with a smile before rushing to his teammates. Shikamaru stood in front of 3 shinobi and smirked before putting his hands in a seal, Kage Nui no Jutsu. His shadow stretched out from under him at quick speed until strings of shadow shot up from the ground and struck the shinobi before they knew what happened. Seeing more enemies ahead, he once placed his hands in a seal. Kajimane no Jutsu. Multiple strings of shadow burst from his own, heading straight for all the shinobi, stopping them in their tracks. These guys are pathetic. It looks like only Orochimaru, Kabuto and Sasuke were the main force, and everyone else is nothing more than cannon fodder. What are they really after? He asked himself before shaking his head and was about to take care of his captured shinobi when he heard Cho Harite. 2 gigantic palms slammed down on the shinobi, instantly killing them. Nice work, Choji. Good timing as well. Choji smirked as he started to shrink down to normal size. Thanks, Akahigi. Kiki Senkuku. They both turned around to see Kankuro using the body of Sasori that Sakura had beaten with the help of Elder Chio. Its head had been detached from the body while holding their palms out as knives with paper bombs attached to them shot out from Sasori's palms and neck, killing enemy shinobi in the large explosions from them. Well, that takes care of that, Kankuro said as he came by Shikamaru and Choji. Where's Ino? He asked, looking around. She's over th. Shikamaru paused as he watched Ino fight off her own enemy shinobi with just her tanto. Ino was using her nimble body and natural flexibility to help her by jumping from shinobi to shinobi, killing them with ease with swift strikes to various parts of the body. Jumping over to another kicked him in the legs, flipping him over so that his hack landed on the ground and stabbed him in the art. Back flipping from her position, she flipped 2 kunai out and flung them at more shinobi coming after her. Turning around, she watched as 2 shinobi were about to reach her when they just stopped while looking confused. Looking around, she saw Shikamaru with his hand in a sign and a smirk on his face. I didn't know you were such a good fighter, Ino. I've been training hard. She paused so that she could take out the frozen shinobi. Ever since 4 years ago, I started to train harder, to help Naruto. And then when he came back and shown all of us at the level he was at, I chose to do something about it and pushed myself to above my limits. She said with a smile. Shikamaru chuckled and shook his head. It seems like no matter what he does, that troublesome blonde always makes us want to better ourselves. He said with a chuckle. That's Naruto for ya, Ino said with a chuckle. Choji nodded in agreement and looked around to see no one left. We should go meet up with Naruto and Sasuke. I can feel their fight from over here. He said with a serious look. Right, let's go. If we're lucky, nothing too bad will happen. Shikamaru said with a sigh as they took off. Hopefully nothing too bad will happen. Inuzuka clan compound. Gatsuga. Came the cry of the Inuzuka matriarch, Sume Inuzuka, as she and her partner Kuromaru repelled the invasion forces from getting any further. Damn, these guys just keep on coming. She growled angrily. Hana, who was by her mother, also growled as more Oto Nin appeared. They don't know when to give up, do they? She asked rhetorically. They're loyal to the end. Sume said with another growl. And it's pissing me off. I wonder if Kiba's having it any better. Hana said with a smirk while her mother also smirked. If anything, he's finished and gone to help Naruto. Sume said with a sigh. Why? Hana asked, confused. Naruto is meant to be fighting Sasuke, and if we're lucky, this village may still be standing tomorrow. Sume said with another sigh. Now let's take these bastards out. Gatsuga. Aburame clan compound. Haijutsu. Mushidama. Bugs surrounded the Oto Nin that were attacking the compound. It was a shame they didn't realize how competent the Aburame actually were when it comes to fighting and protecting their home from invaders. Shibi Aburame sighed soon after the bugs devoured the Oto Nin. They should have learned what happened the last they invaded. He said, shaking his head. Shibi-sama. A clan member shouted. There are some more Oto nin to the west of the compound. We don't have many clan members at that point. Very well, I will take care of it at once. Shibi said before his body dissolved into bugs before leaving the area. Hyuga clan compound. Hakusho Kaden. Oto nin was thrown harshly from the impact off the Hyuga's ultimate defense. You have indeed improved, Hanabi-chan. Hiyashi said to his daughter as he was very proud of what she had accomplished at such a young age. Hanabi turned to her father and smiled proudly. Thank you, father. Well, come on, there are plenty more that need to be dealt with. Her father said before turning to more shinobi. Hake Rokujuyun Sho. Yamanaka clan compound. Shinranshin no Jutsu. Inoichi called out as he used his clan's jutsu to take control of an Oto Zero Nin and force him to kill his comrades, confusing them greatly. It ended though when one of them decided to put an end to it and stabbed him in the throat with a kunai and ripped it out, causing the man to gurgle on his own blood before dropping dead. You guys don't care about your own comrades, huh? Inoichi asked while shaking his head. An Oto Nin looked at him and sneered. The weak die and the strong survive. Inoichi chuckled and grabbed a kunai. Then I guess this is your end. He exclaimed as he ran forward. Akamichi clan compound. Sho Baika no Jutsu. Shoza shouted as he grew into a 30 feet giant towering over all of his enemies. Holding his hands out he slammed them down. Sho Harite. And just like that the Oto Nin were no more. Is this all Orochimaru's forces has to offer? What a joke. Feeling something prick his large leg, he looked down to see a kunai embedded in it, only making him more ticked off. Oh, you're a dead piece of shit, he said as he looked at the now frightened Oto Nin. The last thing he saw was a foot. Nara clan compound. Kujimane no Jutsu. Shikaku's shadow spread out from underneath, shooting to some unsuspecting Oto Nin, stopping them in their tracks. These guys really should have looked up on this village to see what we can do, but instead they attack blind. Kage Kyubi Shibari no Jutsu. The shadow started to grow up the shinobi's body, forming a hand as it reached their necks before simply snapping them, leaving the body to drop dead to the ground. And here I thought these guys would actually be a challenge, he said with a sigh before turning to more opponents. You guys should really give up and go home. Kage Nui no Jutsu. North Gate. Naruto vs. Sasuke. Previously. Shit, what was that jutsu? Sasuke thought to himself as he hefted a tree off of him. Stumbling back into the area, black marks started to gather over his skin. Let's take this up a notch. Sasuke pulled his arms out of the sleeves of his white shirt, letting it drop around his waist as his skin turned dark gray with a black four-pointed shuriken mark grew between his eyes. His sclera turned black while his eyes still kept the Sharingan. His hair lengthened without losing its style. Blue venom lipstick seemed to appear on his lips, and gave him hand-shaped wings on his back. Naruto looked at Sasuke, disgusted at what he'd driven himself to. So this is the new you, huh? Using Orochimaru's cursed seal to get the job done. Sasuke snarled at Naruto with full-blown anger. I'd do whatever it take to get revenge on Itachi, even it means giving up my soul. He shouted angrily. Very well. Naruto spoke in a whisper as they shot towards each other. And now, Naruto and Sasuke both ran at each other full speed, Naruto using his abnormal speed that he had built up over time with the help of his Zanpakuto in all those training sessions he had in his inner world. Never mind his hollow side bringing out the potential within him. Sasuke was running at equal speed thanks to the help of his wings that let him practically fly along the ground at Naruto. Glancing at his sword strapped onto his side, he smirked. Maybe I'll finally be able to use you after all this time, in a real battle. Naruto came in at Sasuke with a kick to the face, only for the raven-haired young man to use his wing to block it while kicking out himself. Naruto grabbed the offending foot, to which Sasuke flipped around, kicking Naruto with his other foot, sending him stumbling, which Sasuke followed up with an uppercut, sending up higher off the ground. Sasuke then used his wings to fly up to Naruto, where he kicked him down to the ground, but instead of crashing like Sasuke wanted, Naruto flipped in midair and landed on his feet while sliding back slightly. If that's all you got, then this should be a breeze, Naruto said with a smirk. Sasuke snarled, staring down at the Rinnegan user. I've got more than you realize, Kyubi brat, he said, using one of the names that the villagers used to call him, which made Naruto's gaze turn cold. I guess I should take this serious then, Naruto said before he vanished from sight, only appear in front of Sasuke. No more playing around. And with that he punched Sasuke in the stomach, causing him to cough up blood. Next he grabbed his arm and swung him around before letting him go, making him fly into the air. Just as Sasuke was about to gain his bearings, Naruto appeared above of him and lifted his foot up before bringing it down on Sasuke's head, sending him crashing to the ground, making a small mushroom cloud from the impact. Is this the great Sasuke Uchiha? What a joke. Naruto taunted only for his widen as he watched a long pole of lightning shoot up at him. Acting as quick as he could, he tilted his head to the side, only allowing the attack to graze his cheek. Looking down, he saw Sasuke stood there. Not a scratch on him, which made him narrow his eyes, but then he saw Sasuke had his hand held up with Raiden chakra pouring from it in a stream shooting up. Chidori Iso. Sasuke said with a blank face on, the look he had gained from all of his training with Orochimaru. You're right. It's time to stop playing games anymore. First time we agreed on anything. Naruto said with a smirk as he lifted his arm up to the jutsu and trailed his hand along it like it was nothing. An interesting jutsu. You've come a long way there, Sasuke. Sasuke smirked and swung his hand at Naruto, sideswiping him with the jutsu, only for the blonde to move his head back and pushing his hand out at Sasuke. Shinra Tensei. Sasuke and the area around him suddenly blew up in a shower of rocks and dust, making him smile. No matter how many times I use that jutsu, I can't get enough of it. Don't get cozy, Naruto. I sense something different about that boy. Ryujin Jaka said to him through the mental link with a warning tone in his voice. Something strange? Naruto questioned. Like you, Naruto, a Zanpakuto spirit, and some sort of taint within him making him darker. I see. I won't underestimate him then. Naruto looked down as he sensed Sasuke gathering chakra around him, causing all of the smoke surrounding him was blown away. He then watched as Sasuke pulled out a white sakabato with a cross guard looking like 3 lightning bolts converging at the point where they meet the blade and hilt. Sasuke looked up at Naruto with that blank look on his face. Tell me, how were you able to move so fast like that? Naruto chuckled. It's a skill I learned from one of my mentors called Shunpo. It allows a person to move around at incredible speed. It takes a lot of training to build up the speed to move around fast with each step. It is this skill that allowed my father to create the Hiraishin, and what enabled me to learn it also. He said with a smirk on his face. Sasuke still remained with the blank look on his face, but inside he was nervous. So he does know the Hiraishin. I wasn't sure if that bingo book page was correct, but to know he can move as a blur, hell faster than a blur. I'll have to stop holding back and use what I learnt. I see, and then I should stop holding back. He exclaimed as he vanished with an after sound that sounded like a boom, with a ripple in the air. Sasuke then appeared behind Naruto, kicking him in the back, because he wasn't expecting such a thing. Naruto was sent across the sky before he made it look like the air had a solid ground on it by placing his hand on it and flipping up. Sasuke smirked at seeing Naruto being sent flying until he reset himself up to his full height while looking at him. That was my very own speed technique, so neato, the exact same as yours in a way, except when I move it leaves a booming sound. My very own Zanpakuto taught it to me, he said as he slid one hand across the blade of his sword. Naruto stared at Sasuke in slight shock for a moment at hearing he had something similar to his speed technique. So you do have a Zanpakuto. This makes everything all the more interested then, doesn't it? Naruto said as he unsheathed Ryujin Jaka, causing sparks of fire to flicker off of the blade as it was pulled out. I'll use Tensa Zangetsu if I end up in a pinch, although, if Sasuke has something akin to a hollow in him, wouldn't that make him like me, or has that cursed seal infected it more? He thought to himself with a frown. Sasuke smirked over at Naruto as he pulled his Zanpakuto up to his face. It's time I introduced you. Say hello to Chidori. Naruto chuckled at the name. Chidori, how ironic, don't you think? Naruto asked rhetorically before pulling his own Zanpakuto along his face, showing the glint off of the edge to show the sharpness of it, and Sasuke had to admit that it looked deadly considering the blade was a bit longer than his own, for now. Say hello to Ryujin Jaka. Sasuke, just from hearing the name, could feel the rush off of the power behind just the name. It's time we took this up a notch then, wouldn't you say? Sasuke smirked as he cut off his cursed seal power so that he returned to normal while powering himself up, causing lightning to flicker all around him. The skies above Sasuke and Naruto started to get darker as clouds formed above them with lightning streaking along, growing more powerful with each second. The clouds turned midnight black before all of the lightning streaks started to shoot down around Sasuke before converging on him as he called out, "Nake! Chidori!" The lightning struck him with a powerful explosion until all smoke vanished from him, revealing his Zanpakuto completely covered in lightning, reminding Naruto of his own Shikai. Naruto chuckled while powering himself up as well, causing a large blast of fire to explode from out of him before moving around him as if shielding him from any outward damage. "You're right, we should take this to the next level." Bansho Isai Kaijin Tenace, Ryujin Jaka. Fire engulfed the Zanpakuto with such unnatural heat that the air around him started to catch fire just from the intensity, while all of the trees close by were blown away while setting alight. The fire from around the katana grew and enveloped Naruto himself, who seemed unfazed from the heat. The power of the release shot up into the sky, parting the clouds above him, revealing a blue sky which started turning red. The fire around Naruto lit up as it now just traveled up his Zanpakuto wielding arm. However, because of the heat of his release, it had burnt all of the clothes off of his upper body, leaving him wearing just his shoes, pants, although his trench coat had stayed on as he had placed seals on it to protect it from the flames. What can he say? He liked the coat. Tensa Zangetsu was still strapped to the side of his hip as well. Sasuke looked at display of power in awe and a bit of fear. Such power, is this really what actual fear feels like? Then again, I've never fought someone else with a Zanpakuto. Who knows what he's actually capable of? Not bad, I'm impressed, Sasuke said with a smirk as he moved into a stance. Naruto chuckled. Enough talk. Show me the great Sasuke Uchiha is capable of. Naruto said as he vanished from view, appearing in front of Sasuke with a downward swing only for it to be blocked by Sasuke's Zanpakuto, which caused the flames to wash over Sasuke, but instead of getting burnt he was feeling the pressure of the power. Acting quickly, he parried the Zanpakuto. Sasuke then stabbed forward at Naruto only for the young man to twist around the blade and backhanding the Uchiha with his free hand, causing him to stumble. Naruto then aimed a strike of Ryujin Jaka at his neck. Thanks to his Sharingan, however, he could the attack, giving him enough time to bend his neck back, and watched as the flaming blade swiped along where his neck was before back flipping away to a safe distance. That was a close one. If it wasn't for my Sharingan I would have a serious neck problem. Damn it, Naruto thought in frustration. I guess I shouldn't have expected it to be that easy, huh? Sasuke growled and brought his Zanpakuto back while charging it with lightning to the point that it was practically glowing with the lightning and changing the atmosphere around him. Swinging his arm forward, he brought Chidori in a wide arc while shouting, "Tenjin Raiga!" A large blue electrical wave burst from Chidori and roared across the sky towards Naruto at extreme speed. Naruto pulled back Ryujin Jaka and focused his chakra into it, causing fire to wrap around it, creating a vortex wrapped around it. Anko Wangetsu, he shouted as he brought his sword around, letting the crescent-shaped blade of fire burst free, heading straight for Sasuke's technique. The two large attacks met halfway between the two warriors, causing a large explosion that rocked the area while causing such a shockwave that it blew the two away, which was a good thing as fire and lightning were shooting off everywhere. Getting his footing, Naruto looked up to see Sasuke doing the same. Holding his Zanpakuto out so that the front of the blade faced Sasuke, he concentrated his fire at the front. Raiden. Multiple fireballs burst from the tip of the Zanpakuto directly at Sasuke. Sasuke barely had time to do anything as the fireballs soared towards him. Just after he gained his bearings, holding his Zanpakuto in front of him, he called out, "Hirameku no Tate." An oval shield of lightning appeared in front of the Zanpakuto, covering both that and Sasuke as the fireballs impacted with the shield, throwing Sasuke back from the force of the explosion. Sasuke slid along the air by using his Shinigami powers to defy gravity. He was unable to do anything, however, as Naruto appeared at his side, kicking him in the ribs, sending him crashing to the ground, creating a crater. Sasuke stood up from the crater with his clothes tattered and a couple cuts and bruises. Looking at Naruto, he noticed how he was barely even hurt at all. Flying back up in the sky to the same level as Naruto, he vanished in a burst of Sonito and appeared behind Naruto with a slash at his midsection. Naruto ducked low, avoiding the sword as it passed over his hair, cutting bits off. Swing his legs around, he aimed for Sasuke's own legs only for him to jump over them. Grasping his Zanpakuto tightly, He enveloped it in more flames, making it more powerful. He stabbed up at Sasuke, aiming for his chest, only for the Uchiha to bend backwards, avoiding the stab as it grazed his nose slightly. Sasuke backflipped, but in the process he kicked Ryujin Jaka, which knocked it from Naruto's hands, sending it crashing to the ground but still aflame. Backflipping some more, he held Chidori up while gathering lightning around him, causing thunderstorms all across the area. Behind Sasuke, the shape of a giant eagle was being formed from the electricity being summoned. Kaminake. Pointing his Zanpakuto forward, he ordered the giant eagle to attack, which it did, at speeds that would make Shunpo look slow. Naruto, who was now helpless, looked up at the giant lightning eagle heading for him, and despite the situation he was in, had to admit that was pretty badass technique. Thinking of a way to save him, realization hit him as he patted the left side of him where Tensa Zangetsu was nestled safely. "Looks like it's your debut today," he whispered to it with a chuckle. Unsheathing Tensa Zangetsu, a rush of power filled his being as he was granted its power. Amazing, and this isn't even with the hollow mask. If I would ever use Ryujin Jaka, Tensa Zangetsu and the hollow mask, I don't want to know the possibilities, now I just have to gain Bankai. Already granted the knowledge of the Zanpakuto, he lifted it up in a vertical angle as black energy with a red outline burst around the entire Zanpakuto like it was fire itself. Swinging downward, he called out, "Karui Getsuga." The black energy exploded free and roared towards the eagle in a vertical blast. As the eagle and black energy made contact, they batted against each other, the Getsuga trying to break through and split the eagle in half, and the eagle trying to penetrate through the Getsuga. Naruto, seeing that the two techniques were still fighting each other, dropped down to the ground without a noise and grasped Ryujin Jaka securely, and he now held his two Zanpakuto, power flowing through him like a tsunami. Once more another explosion rocked the area, only this time the black energy covered the sky while the lightning flown around it. The explosion was so large that it actually struck the ground that Naruto was stood, ripping large chunks of rock from the ground, while Sasuke blown back through the eight towards the ground, creating one more crater. Sasuke stood from the crater, smoking around the edges slightly, but he a smirk on his face which was annoying Naruto. "Not bad, Dobi. I didn't think it was possible to have two Zanpakutos, once more you've proven me wrong," he said, although the smirk remained there. "Where are you going with this?" Naruto asked while grasping both Zanpakuto tightly. Ryujin Jaka lit brighter than ever, while Tensa Zangetsu had black energy flicking from it. Sasuke chuckled while his body exploded in lightning. "It's just you have all this power, and it actually amazed me you were this strong, even though we haven't truly tested our shinobi abilities. But I have one more level 1 can go," he said with a more serious face. Naruto looked in shock as Sasuke's body and Zanpakuto started to glow brighter. Could he have gained Bankai? If he does, I don't know if I'll last long enough. Damn it, I've been lacking too much. Sasuke brought his Zanpakuto up horizontally in front of his chest while he placed 2 fingers from his other hand on top of the blade and scratched it. Bankai. A second later and the entire area was caught in an explosion of raw power, shaking the village. And Naruto was rewarded, to his horror, Sasuke with a full-blown Bankai. Part of the forest by Naruto and Sasuke. 2 figures were stood in the trees watching the battle below and could not help but be impressed by how it was going considering how young they were in their Shinigami powers. What was frightening, however, was the fact that they weren't going all out. They could sense much more power in both boys, but it was like an unlimited supply of power and potential in the Namikaze boy. These 2 people had come in search of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze because they were well aware of who he was, and what he held, and wanted to strengthen him for the future ahead of him. Such as the Akatsuki, which had gained much more powerful members as of late, although they didn't realize just who he was at the time. One of the figures was a dark-skinned woman with golden-collared eyes and long purple hair, which she keeps up in a ponytail. Her standard attire consists of a backless, black sleeveless undershirt, an orange overshirt with 2 white straps on each shoulder, a large beige sash around her waist, black stretch pants and long beige wrist warmers, secured by bands, and long beige leg warmers with brown light shoes. This was Yoruichi Shihoin. Amongst her comrades she had earned the name Shunshin. She had gained her Shinigami powers at the age of 10 when her family home had been attacked by bandits, killing her mother and then her father. Seeing all of that had driven her into a blind rage where she killed them all effortlessly. Since that day she had trained hard by working with her Zanpakuto almost non-stop, wanting to do well in the world so other families wouldn't have to go through what she did. She had earned her Shikai and Bankai and further developed herself to the point that she could fight without the need of a Zanpakuto simply by using her extraordinary speed to kill effectively and other unique techniques she had created. 6 years ago, however, she had ended up in a village called Uzushiogakure and had become a part of the special ops, but she also had another job, recruiting those with Shinigami powers for the village. The cage of the village was a kind, gentle woman, but when she was in a fight, she was a cold-trained shinobi with the use of her own Zanpakuto. The reason that the cage wanted those with Zanpakutos to be a part of their village was because she wanted them to be trained correctly and be made sure they were on the right path with their power. Also, it would bring the village back to the top ever since the Uzukage had rebuilt the country 18 years ago. She had also told her it was a way of honoring a memory of someone close to her by helping those who are different from others. However, the cage had gained information about a Zanpakuto user in Konoha, a village that the cage never wanted to go back to for the pain it caused her for just being there. Now though, she had found the long-lost son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, her Uzukage. At first she was going to go straight back to Kushina to tell her the news, but if word got out so easily that the two were related at this time, then all hell would break loose. The kid already had Akatsuki breathing down his neck, and now Orochimaru and Sasuke Uchiha were after him too. While looking up information on the heir of the Namikaze and Uzumaki, she had found out that 4 years ago the young man had been banished from the village for not bringing the last Uchiha back. Ever since then he traveled the countries, meeting and training with the Raikage, becoming friends with the two Jinchuriki there. Getting the affection of the Mizukage, never mind the fact he was best friends with the Kazekage. And all the while on this journey he had ended up becoming an S-rank shinobi by simply training to his heart's content. As she had watched him fight though, she had noticed him having 2 Zanpakutos and couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by their power. He truly was his father's and mother's son. She also noticed something off about his chakra, that it was tainted slightly, and she knew just what it was: his inner hollow. They already had some people with an inner hollow at Uzushiogakure, and unlike some countries, they treated them with respect for their power and the fact they can actually tame the beast. Hell, they had a special group for them called the Vizards. They were similar to Kurigakure's Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananan Shu, only they were hoping for more than just 7 members. But unlike the others she had met and worked with, Naruto's inner hollow seemed more at peace, as if it was one with Naruto, which she thought could be possible if they worked together. But what reason would one do that? Unless it knew about Naruto's troubles and then it may do it to survive. Either way she would find out eventually. What she had planned to do though is to train the young man, teach him everything she knew so that he would be safer in the world. With being her cage's son, she saw it as some way to repay her for giving her a life, a place to feel at peace and a place to call home. She could teach him what she knew so that when he faced Akatsuki he would be ready, especially with its additional forces. She just had to wait for this battle to finish, and then she can approach him when she thinks he's ready. The other person beside her would pass off as a Nara any day. He has wavy, shoulder-length dark brown hair that he keeps unkempt and parted down the middle. He also has a faded goatee. He wears a white jacket outlined in black, though altered with the collar upturned. A black sash is worn in a manner similar to a matador around his waist. He wears white gloves. He has the number 1 as tattoo on the back of his left hand, which he conceals with his glove. This was Coyote Stark. He was different from a person who used a Zanpakuto. Well, now he was. He was what was called an Arankar, much like a Vizard, only in the way that they each had an inner hollow. Years ago, he and a bunch of other Zanpakuto-wielding people were captured by the snake Sanin, Orochimaru. He had found out that all those people are special as they contained an inner hollow, which to him sounded like his curse seal. So after some experimentation with them, the curse seal and God only knows what, all the Shinigami hybrids had eventually had the inner hollow become so merged with him that became a completely different kind with strange abilities. Eventually they had all broken out, but some of them had become so tainted with the power that they had become evil and gone to work for Akatsuki, believing they would gain more power. Unlike normal Zanpakuto wielders, they did not have Shikai or Bankai, but rather something called resurrection that allowed them to become more like their inner hollow and much more powerful. However, there were some like him who still retained most of his humanity and, believe it or not, ended up in Uzushiogakure, where he would partner up with a wizard, seeing as they work best together as they are more alike than anyone else. But right now at the present, he too had been surprised to see his cage's long-lost son who she thought had died, right here, fit and healthy and looking more like his father every day. He too, like Yoruichi, felt the need to teach the boy all the information needed about the hollow side, as he could feel it clear as day within the boy, and that it had merged with him, working with him in sync, making him the perfect wizard or Rankar hybrid ever. What should we do? Yoruichi asked her partner. Stark sighed and leaned back against a tree. For now, we wait. We can't exactly take him out of the village. We need to approach him carefully and explain everything to him. Yoruichi gave a nod in agreement before looking back at him. Should we tell him about his mother? She asked in concern. No, Stark said with a shake of his head. Not straight away anyway. We will approach him in about 2 weeks. That should give him enough time to get what he needs doing after this battle. I can tell he hasn't achieved Bankai yet, but he isn't far off it. What if we can't approach him by then? She asked, knowing that a life like Naruto's anything could happen. We inform the Uzukage about what we have learned. No doubt when she finds out she will want to see him, but at the same time be scared. For all we know, he believes his mother abandoned him. He knows of his father being dead, but there was no body to prove Uzumaki-sama was dead, just that she had disappeared. That's why he needs to be told of everything. He may get angry, but then he may be happy. Yoruichi sighed. Sometimes this job was too much of a hassle. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Stark confirmed. Kagura vs. Raiga Kurosuke. Previously. Don't tell me that's all you got. Kagura exclaimed with a feral grin at seeing her handiwork. All of a sudden the building exploded outwards, blowing everything off of it as Raiga stepped out with chakra and lightning shooting out of him. He then placed the hilts of his swords together and started spinning them at high velocity speed before he shouted. Reigeki no Yoroi. What happened next shocked her, as every single bit of him was cased in blue lightning, not leaving an opening. Well shit, that wasn't supposed to happen. She muttered before the lightning cove red man charged at her. It's time I kicked your ass for good, you overgrown light bulb. She exclaimed as she ran at him full on. And now, swinging her Zanpakuto at the lightning-encased man, nothing happened as her scythe was bounced off of the shell, which made her wide-eyed as nothing had been able to block her Zanpakuto before. Raiga swung his swords at Kagura, which flung her back as she tried to block, leading up to being thrown across the battlefield. Flipping up, Kagura stabbed her Zanpakuto into the ground while flying through hand seals and called out. Futon. Kyo Tatsumaki Kaimetsu no Jutsu. A tornado of gigantic proportions formed out of thin air, which started to rip buildings apart from around her and was sent soaring toward Raiga while destroying everything in its path. Raiga, seeing the attack, simply smirked before he sunk into the ground, vanishing from view, which put Kagura on edge, slightly not know where he went. A couple seconds later, Raiga burst up from the ground in front of Kagura, causing her to jump back, just missing being cut down by both swords. You're quick, for a girl. Raiga said tauntingly. Yup. You should ask my boyfriend. She said with a smirk on her face while thoughts ran wild within her mind. I will after I kill you. He shouted as he charged forward, bring his 2 swords down on her while she brought she scythe up to block while create black lightning around it to counter his lightning. Kagura knocked Raiga away and brought her Zanpakuto down on him as hard as she could while gathering black lightning around the blade, which only caused it to spark against his defense. Gathering more lightning, she called out at point-blank range. Karui Kaminari Kurzento ha! Black lightning exploded from the blade, which was in direct contact with Raiga, and blew them both away while a mushroom cloud formed from the intense explosion. Picking herself off of the ground, or rather the small crater she was blown into, she looked up to see that Raiga was still in the same place, but she could easily tell he was injured as the lightning armor was fluctuating slightly while his breathing was haggard. Going through hand seals, Kagura called out. Kurisutaru Getsue no Genkaku. All of a sudden the area turned into a sky-lit area, which confused Raiga as he started to look around while the lights were blinding him slightly. What the hell? Genjutsu. Placing his hands in a sign, he called out. Kai. Nothing. What the? Kagura, seeing Raiga looking confused, pout his hand in a seal and whispered. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 clones poofed into existence around her before going towards Raiga but making sure he couldn't see them all. One of the clones ran at Raiga and aimed at his neck with the Zanpakuto only for him to block at the last second with one of his swords. Brining his foot around, he kicked the clones in the ribs, causing her to tumble. Ha, not so tough now, are ya, bitch? Who are you talking to? Another clone asked from behind Raiga, who looked around in shock to see Kagura stood there. Looking back, he saw nothing. What the hell is going on? The clone of Kagura went through hand seals before calling out. Futon. Hanachiri Mai. Petals suddenly formed out of thin air before forming a cyclone which she sent at Raiga, who tried to block it only for the petals to break through the lightning armor and cut him thanks to the wind. Stopping the attack, she poofed away before Raiga could see when another Kagura clone appeared on the other side of Raiga. Futon. Kazakiri. An invisible blade of wind cut at Raiga's back, which caused him to stumble forward before spinning around just after she poofed out of existence. The 4th clone appeared to his side and struck with her Zanpakuto repeatedly, causing him to falter in his guard each time as the lights from all around him before she shot a wave of lightning from her Zanpakuto at him that allowed her to disappear. What the hell is going on here? It can't be genjutsu, I'm actually getting hurt, but then what the hell is with that butch appearing everywhere in these lights? Shinku Getsue no Orori. The remaining Kagura clone spun her Zanpakuto to create 5 tornadoes and fired them at Raiga as they started to cut him even through the lightning armor before it started to flicker even more. The real Kagura ran at Raiga with her hand held out and chakra gathering within it. Here a little trick Naruto-kun taught me for pricks like you. Getting closer, she slammed the attack into his chest. Rasengan. The chakra ball screeched as it grinded against the lightning armor as the armor started to vanish until it was no more, allowing Kagura to push the jutsu into his stomach, which ripped it apart from the rotation power of the ball before sending him flying into a house and out of the other side. Arg. Jumping from building to building to get higher, she jumped off of the last one and swung her Zanpakuto down at the body. Karui Kaminari Kurzento Ha. Kagura sent down a crescent wave of black lightning, causing an explosion on impact. As the aftermath vanished, it shone Raiga's body had been destroyed and his swords had been broken up as well. Well, good riddance, he was starting to piss me the hell off. Before she could say anything else, an explosion of power rocked the village to his core. Looking at the epicenter, she noticed it was the direction of Naruto and Sasuke. That bastard better still be alive or I'll go to the afterlife just to kick his ass, she said as she rushed in that direction. Kurenai vs. Tayuya. Previously. Opening her yes, everything started to come into focus when she felt the katana in her hand. All the information seemed to flood her mind as she grasped the Zanpakuto it tightly before bringing it up to her face and whispered. Kudakero, Kyoka Suigetsu, Shatter, Mirror Flower, Water Moon. Time resumed as normal as the blades of wind flew at Kurenai. It ripped through her, causing her limbs to be blown off, organs to be ripped to shreds and blood to be poured all over the place. Sighing, Tayuya shut her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered to herself until she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Kurenai stood there with her Zanpakuto, completely unharmed. Sorry about what? Now? How? I just fucking ripped you to shreds, Tayuya said in shock at seeing a perfectly unharmed Kurenai in front of her with a smirk on her face. You can say I owe it all to my own Zanpakuto, she said, lifting her Zanpakuto up while it faced downwards. Kudakero, Kyoka Suigetsu. The next thing Tayuya saw was the dead body of Kurenai shatter like glass, making her realize it never happened, it only made it seem like it did. How the fuck did that work? Tayuya exclaimed in shock. It controls the 5 senses to the point that it can make the target misinterpret another person's form, shape, mass, feel and smell to be that of the enemy. The initiation condition for the hypnosis is to show the enemy the release of Kyoka Suigetsu. After seeing it just once, that person will completely succumb to the hypnosis. Just like a genjutsu that can't be broken, or seen through. Whoa, Tayuya said in shock at such an ability. Now, why did you say you're sorry? Weren't you ordered to kill by Orochimaru just like everyone else? Kurenai asked. It's got nothing to do with you, the redhead said as she raised her tachika still in its shikai form, swinging it at Kurenai with some slashes. Some more long blades of wind flew along the ground, ripping it all apart as it was sent to Kurenai. Kurenai however just lifted her Zanpakuto up, blocking all the blades from even touching her, and watched in satisfaction as they vanished while Tayuya stood dumbstruck. I told you. Kurenai paused for a second as she reappeared behind Tayuya. I can control all of your senses no matter what. A second later, multiple cuts formed all over Tayuya, causing her to gasp in shock even as they started healing themselves because of her Shinigami powers. Damn, bitch, she exclaimed as she swung her fist around, aiming it at Kurenai. A glowing chakra ball grew at the end of her fist that was holding her Zanpakuto-sized dagger. Powering up some more, she let it go and watched as it flew at Kurenai, blowing the area up, forming a crater. You need to work on your anger issues, Kurenai said from a good distance away from Tayuya. Now tell me, why did you say sorry after you thought you killed me? Tayuya sighed and lowered her head. Because I don't want to kill people for no reason. Hell, the only reason I'm with Orochimaru right now is because I have nowhere to go whatsoever. I thought that when I gained my Zanpakuto I would have the power to kill him, to get free once and for all. I was delusional. Ever since I left for dead 4 years ago because of that lazy bastard and the Suna bitch, I knew the place I could ever go was Oto. Tayuya explained with a downcast expression, ready to be killed. I see, Kurenai said while thinking that Tayuya may be willing to join Konoha, or rather join Naruto, as that is where she belonged. Kill me, Tayuya mumbled. What? Kurenai asked in shock. I said kill me, Tayuya shouted in hopelessness. No, Kurenai told her. What? Tayuya asked with a confused look. I won't kill you. Not when you could do so much in the world still. The rave-haired woman answered. What the hell are you talking about? Tayuya asked, confused. How would you like to join Naruto? Kurenai asked the redhead. Tayuya arched an eyebrow at that. Of course she knew who he was. Hell, he could most likely kill Orochimaru on his own, and being offered something like that sounded too good to be true. She also knew that Naruto was one of the good guys out there that would do his best to help his friends in need no matter what and always be there for them. Why? Tayuya asked, confused. Naruto won't always be in this village. He will eventually leave to go make his own village or start a group. He needs people with him for that, and I know you need someone you like to depend on, knowing that someone would always watch your back. Kurenai explained. Tayuya thought about it and had to admit it was a good offer. What if he doesn't want me? She asked, trying to ease her fears of being abandoned. Kurenai chuckled and sheathed her Zanpakuto. Naruto would never abandon anyone who needs help, she said reassuringly. Tayuya sighed and returned her Zanpakuto to its sealed state and sheathed it. Fine, I'll join. Kurenai smiled gently and gave a nod. God then la. She was unable to say anything when they heard a large explosion and the village rocked like there was an earthquake. Looking at where it was coming from, Kurenai's eyes widened. Oh no, that's where Naruto-kun is. Come on, she shouted as she and Tayuya ran towards Naruto's location. East Gate. Tsunade and Jiraiya vs. Orochimaru. Manda slithered along the ground towards Gamabunta while Orochimaru was stood on top of his head acting like some sort of god. As Manda got close, he opened his mouth, revealing fangs with venom dripping off of them. As he was about to bite down on Gamabunta, he was intercepted by the Chief Toad's dagger while it held its ground. Jiraiya ran along Gamabunta's head and dove off, heading for Manda's head where Orochimaru was stood looking over everything. As Jiraiya landed, he rushed at Orochimaru and sent a kick at him, only for the man to backflip out of the way. Come on Jiraiya, surely you can do better than that. The snake Sannin taunted. Zeshi Nensen. Both Sannin had to apply more chakra to their feet to stay on Manda as it moved at high speed to dodge the acid attack that Katsuyu had shot at Manda, which only impacted the ground, melting it completely. Jiraiya barely had time to move as a kunai whizzed past his face, almost cutting his cheek. Spinning around, he reached his hand out and caught Orochimaru's wrist as he was about to stab Jiraiya with another kunai. Jiraiya then pulled down on Orochimaru, yanking him down where face met knee in a brutal attack that left Orochimaru dazed for a second before a fist made contact with his face, sending him rolling down the large snake. Jiraiya flipped off of the snake back to Gamabunta as Tsunade landed on Manda in his place with a heel drop. Sudankyaku. As soon as Tsunade's heel made contact with Manda's head, it was sent to the ground in a large explosion where the back of his tail flipped up, flinging Orochimaru away towards Jiraiya, who started to go throw hand seals. Kaden. Enden. Jiraiya blew a large amount of fire, making it look like a flamethrower as it made contact with Orochimaru, However, to the Toad Sanin's annoyance, Orochimaru turned to mud. Damn snake. Jiraiya growled, annoyance shown on his face. Gamabunta, seeing the situation, Manda was in, lifted his dagger up and brought it down its head, pinning it to the ground. Now stay there while I skin you alive. Gamabunta said with what looked like a grin. Bunta, give me some oil to finish the snake off. Jiraiya told the boss Toad, who have a nod before doing a hand seal. Gamayuden. Gamabunta's cheeks bulged out before shooting a large quantity of oil at snakes while Jiraiya called out his own jutsu. Kaden. Enden. He shouted as he shot stream of fire from his mouth down onto the oil. Both jutsus merge and shot towards the snake with a wide span of fire that would most likely kill it instantly, if another voice didn't shout out, Kuchios, Rashomon. A large demonic gate shot up from the ground, blocking the fire, oil combination jutsu from reaching Manda, much to the giant snake's relief. Orochimaru then appeared in front of Jiraiya with the Kusanagi no Tsurugi. Jiraiya was just in time to duck under the stab from Orochimaru and was then saved as Tsunade appeared behind the snake charmer, kicking him off of Gamabunta down to the ground. Phew, that was close. Jiraiya said, standing up with Tsunade's help. You can pay me back later. Tsunade said with a smirk. A second later, Manda was dispelled because of the dagger still in its head, as it was stopping him from doing anything. Jiraiya looked down at Gamabunta and said, You can go now, Bunta. Gamabunta looked up at him and grunted. Fine, just take care of the snake bastard this time, he said before vanishing, leaving the two Sanin to drop the ground. Tsunade looked over at Katsuyu. You can go as well, thanks, she said with a nod. Katsuyu seemed to bow before. Very well, Tsunade-sama. A second later, she was gone. Jiraiya looked over at Tsunade and shook his head. Why the hell can't Gamabunta treat me with respect? He asked himself, which Tsunade smirked at. I hear he's nice with Naruto, she said with a chuckle at seeing Jiraiya with a tick mark. Both Sanin then looked over to Orochimaru when a large explosion shook the village. All three looked at the point of origin when they realized where it was coming from. Orochimaru looked at his two ex-teammates when he suddenly got a stabbing pain through his chest. Well, Tsunade, Jiraiya, looks like we'll end this for now, he said before running off in the direction of the explosion. Oh no you don't, you bastard, Jiraiya said as both Sanin chased after him. Naruto, you had better be alright, Tsunade thought with worry. Team 8, Temari and Sakura. All of them were running towards Naruto and Sasuke location when a bright light blinded them until the explosion came that almost knocked them off of their feet. What the hell was that? Kiba exclaimed. It's Sasuke. Chakra is exploding out of him, Hinata said as she used her Byakugan. We gotta hurry. Naruto may be in danger, Temari said with some worry. Right, let's go. That's some crazy power, Sakura said as they all sped up. Westgate, Kakashi, Team Guy, Team 10, Kankuro and Gurren. As the large group was running towards where Naruto and Sasuke were fighting, they could see explosions every now and again, and from the distance they were, it wasn't hard to realize that they weren't playing around. But they all came to a stop when the entire village shook from what felt like raw power. What the hell was that? Ino asked while looking around. I have no idea, but look, Shikamaru said, pointing in the distance of them where Naruto and Sasuke were. The sky was pretty much lit up with lightning while smoke covered the entire place and some sort of blue glowing was lighting up the forest. What the hell has happened over there? Kankuro asked, not expecting an answer. Is that the place you said is the person like me? Gurren asked Team 10. Yeah, and if you're lucky you may see how much he's like you, jutsu-wise the lot, Ino said with a smirk. It seems like Naruto-san is having a bit of trouble dealing with Sasuke, Neji said with a frown. Wouldn't we get in the way if we meet up with him? Choji asked. I don't know, but we gotta move quick if we want Naruto to come back safe, Tenten said with a grim expression. Everyone else shared the same look as well. Right, everyone, let's go, full speed, Guy shouted as they all shot off. Forest outside of Konoha. Naruto versus Sasuke. You have got to be shitting me, Naruto exclaimed over the explosion that practically blinded him. As the light from the power outage started to diminish, he lowered his arm, which had covered his eyes, only see what looked like a sphere of black chakra and lightning. Konoha and Sand Trio Nin. It was at this point that everyone had finally arrived, only to stare in shock at the sight of the battleground, as it looked like a war had taken place, and to think it was only 2 people that had caused such damage. My god, can you imagine what would have happened if they fought in the village? Tsunade asked Jiraiya in shock. I don't even want to know, he said with a grim expression at the image. Naruto's still holding back, a lot, Kagura said with a frown while everyone stared in shock. What? Why? How? Kurenai exclaimed in shock. I think Naruto has been testing him this whole time to see what he was capable of, and by his expression on his face, I take he didn't expect things to got his far, or for Sasuke to have such power. Kagura said with the frown still in place. That's Bankai without a doubt, but I didn't realize Sasuke had a Zanpakuto. This may be harder than we first thought. Man, Naruto's still the troublesome blonde he always was. Shikamaru said with a sigh. Shouldn't we help him? Tayuya asked, who was stood by Kurenai. Aren't you the enemy? Sakura asked, confused. That doesn't matter right now, but no, she isn't. Kurenai said, speaking up for Tayuya much to her shock. Either way, if we do help, we'll get in the way. The best teamwork we can offer right now is to stay away. Kakashi said while watching intensely. Naruto must do this alone. Gaara spoke as he appeared by the group, startling them. This is Naruto's test for himself, to see how much he has improved against Sasuke. He spoke as if from experience. With Orochimaru and Kabuto, what should we do, Orochimaru-sama? Kabuto asked while he held Orochimaru's arm around his neck, keeping him up. Orochimaru frowned at seeing such power coming from Sasuke, never knowing he had such a thing. For now we wait, it may get interesting. With Naruto and Sasuke, the sphere of black chakra and lightning started to crack. A clawed hand punched through it, and then another, and the legs came through one at a time before Sasuke stood there in his new appearance. He now had lightning claws on his hands and feet, a tail, and a purple energy wolf-like form over his body with black lightning flickering around him. In his right hand was his Zanpakuto, still enveloped lightning. Ju Chidori, Sasuke said with a smirk at feeling his new power. How does it feel, Naruto, to be in the presence of someone with more power than you? He asked rhetorically. Naruto, however, answered anyway. I'll tell you when it happens. Sasuke growled and shot forward at Naruto at speeds Naruto didn't know existed. He barely had enough time to block a claw at his face by putting Tensei-Zangetsu there to block it, which still pushed him across the ground. Sasuke then swung his Zanpakuto at Naruto free spot, but thanks to Naruto's own speed he managed to block it with Ryujin Jaka, which now left Naruto frontal area free, which Sasuke smirked at. Bringing his right foot up, he kicked Naruto full force, sending him flying through trees before chasing after him. Sasuke chased into the trees after Naruto. As he was still lifted off of the ground, he slid underneath him and kicked him upwards into the sky, where he pushed off of the ground to chase after him. Upon reaching him, he kicked him back down to the ground, causing a tremor in the earth. Is this what the great Namikaze can do? You're pathetic, Naruto, a disgrace to your father and mother. Your father and mother would roll over in their grave if they saw how pathetic and weak you are now. He shouted down at Naruto. Konoha nin. Oh crap, Kagura said while backing up. What? Tsunade asked, confused. There are a lot of things you can say to Naruto and not get him pissed, but the last guy who insulted his parents, well, I couldn't find a speck of ash left after Naruto was done. She said, a grimace. She was bloodthirsty, but what Naruto had done had made her look tame. This is gonna get more dangerous, huh? Kiba asked with a small smirk. With Naruto and Sasuke, where Naruto stood, a blast of black chakra was blown to sky, pushing away all dust surrounding him, showing him stood there looking down with energy pouring out of him in waves. Grasping Ryujin Jaka, he returned it to its sealed state before resheathing it. Taking off his trench coat, he threw it over to where the Konoha nins were situated. Stabbing Tensei-Zangetsu into the ground, he crossed his arms in a cross formation while bent slightly. Glyphs started to glow all over his body as he yelled out. Gravity seal. Release. The glyphs on his body flashed a moment as everyone felt a gush of wind flow into past them before more intricate glyphs appeared over Naruto once more. Chakra restriction seal. Release. This time a large concentration of chakra burst free of Naruto, allowing everyone to feel the pressure it was outputting and the power it was emitting. Standing back up fully, he grasped Tensei-Zangetsu as black energy started to wrap around it, strengthening the blade by adding his Karui Getsuga to it without release it. By doing this it maximizes the power of the Zanpakuto by enforcing it with such dense chakra. Naruto looked up to see Sasuke staring down at him with a smug smile on his face. People can call me the Dobi, the dropout, hell even a demon, and I won't let it bother me. But when someone decides to insult my family or friends, that's where I de-ice that the line has been crossed. And considering your own family's legacy, Naruto simply vanished from the spot, no sound, not even movement from the grass or mud on the floor to even show he moved, but the next moment he was up in the sky in front of Sasuke. You have no right to disgrace my family's name, he shouted as he swung his Zanpakuto down on Sasuke, who tried to block it only to feel the added strength from it. Naruto grinned behind the flickers of black chakra coming off of the blade into Sasuke horror, he spoke. Karui Getsuga. Before Sasuke could even blink, a large amount of black and red chakra burst free from the blade that had been stored up and slammed right into him, forcing a cry of pain out of his throat as he was slammed back into the ground, destroying a good portion of the forest in the one attack, while the aftershock blew everyone away that had been watching, while he simply floated up in the air looking down with a calmed anger. Naruto held his right hand downwards, his left hand holding his wrist as a blue ball of fire swarmed around it, converging on the palm. Hado number 33 Sokatsui. The ball of fire burst from his hand, shooting down to Sasuke like an arrow, eventually reaching its target. It struck the ground, blowing everything up. On instinct he brought Tensa Zangetsu up behind him to block a strike from Sasuke, who had appeared with his Chidori in a downward swing. You're getting slow, Sasuke-chan. Naruto taunted as he flipped over a leg kick that came from his clawed foot. Sasuke then used his tail to grab Naruto by the foot and swung him around before letting him fly across the sky. Gathering black lighting in his Zanpakuto, he pulled back to build up a swing and swung forward with a roar. Tenjin Raiga. The black lightning roared from the Zanpakuto on a beeline with Naruto. Naruto flipped in midair to see the lightning crescent soaring towards him. Swinging his Zanpakuto, he fired off another Karui Getsuga to intercept Sasuke's technique. Both met, eventually causing a large explosion, blowing the both back a bit. Naruto straightened himself up and looked at Sasuke, and for the first time since he landed an attack he noticed a scar had formed along his chest from his attack before. Is this all your Bankai has to offer? What a joke, and here I was all hyped up, I'll finally face someone with Bankai. Naruto said with a mock pout on his face. Sasuke growled as his black wolf cloak started to darken more with his anger while turning more feral. Shut up, Namikaze. You haven't seen anything yet. Sasuke shouted in fury. Sasuke started to increase the output of his Zanpakuto, rapidly causing it to shoot off small shots of electricity. Lifting it up, he pointed the tip to the sky, which shot a single lightning bolt that pierced the clouds and ripped the sky open. Tenraidenku. A gigantic lightning bolt of which Naruto had never seen before broke through from the heavens and shot down on his position, which was right above everyone down below. Shit. This isn't good, I can't move or everyone will die. He exclaimed angrily. Sasuke, seeing his predicament, laughed. Ha, what will you do, Naruto? Sacrifice yourself and save everyone. Or let them die like the worthless dogs they are. He shouted down to him. Naruto sighed and let go of his Zanpakuto, letting it drop down to the ground, sticking in with the hilt sticking towards the sky. Holding up his hands he shouted, Shinra Tensei, and the lightning bolt struck him, but thanks to the jutsu he was able to hold it for a few seconds until it put strain on him, forcing him down to the ground. Now on the ground with his hands still held up, sweat started to trickle down his forehead from the strain of the jutsu while his nose started to bleed. Damn. This is tougher than I first thought it would be. Looking behind him he noticed everyone staring at him in shock, awe and worry. Everyone get away from here now. What? Naruto, we can help. Kurenai shouted as she grasped her Zanpakuto in its sheath. Naruto shook his head. You can't. This is too dangerous. When this explodes any second, you lot will be in the blast radius, now go. He shouted with desperation in his voice as more sweat trickled down his face. Fine. But if anything happens to you, I'm bringing you back just to kick you ass. Kagura shouted, which brought a smile to his face as he watched the entire group run off. I hope you do, love. He said with a chuckle. The next second his whole world turned white as the technique blew up, destroying everything. With the Konoha nin, they had just stopped outside of the forest which was close to the north gate, which surprising since that was where they started off their fight. Now they were just waiting for any sign that Naruto would survive. Do you think he'll be alright? Temari asked with worry. Tsunade sighed as she looked at the forest with expectation. The brat had better be, I'm not losing him just yet. She said with another sigh. You and me both. Kurenai said with a smirk, more confident in herself since her meeting with her Zanpakuto. I don't know how that Gaki has got you, woman rapped his finger. Jiraiya said with a shake of his head. Kagura chuckled with a grin on her face. The fact that he's a Viking in the sack helps. She said, causing some of the women there to drool and blush. Gurren and Tayuya felt like the odd ones out in the conversation. After seeing what Naruto was capable of doing and the lengths he would go for his people, they had decided that they would stay with the leaf, or more specifically Naruto. Just then the forest lit up in a black flash of light as the entire ground shook from its power. The only way they stood up is because of using chakra in their feet. Looking up, they noticed how lightning seemed to be pouring over the explosion. Holy shit! Ino exclaimed. Nicely put. Kankuro said with a smirk. How the hell could Naruto withstand that? Sakura asked in shock. He has tougher skin than normal people. Kagura said while looking on in worry. What do you mean? Hinata asked. Ever since Naruto has gained his Zanpakuto, he had become much stronger, and as he grew stronger, his skin also became tough to the point that a normal kunai would practically bounce off of him. He can take more damage than people realize, hell sometime I even forget. She said with a chuckle. Just then the bushes started to rustle. All of them got on guard for whoever would come out, only to see Naruto, in his clothes he had left on, which left him shirtless. Ryujin Jaka was strapped to his right while Tensa Zangetsu was in his left hand. His skin had scorch marks, his forehead was bleeding, and he had numerous cuts on him with blood dribbling out of each. They got away, he said before his eyes rolled in the back of his head and fell forward. Naruto! Kagura shouted as she ran at him to catch him. Tsunade came over a second later and placed her hands over his body, running a scan as her hands turned green. He's okay, just unconscious. He's extremely worn out though, all of that fighting must have really taken it out of him. We need to get him to the hospital. Tsunade told everyone as they started back to the village. With Yoruichi and Stark. He's much stronger than I first thought. Stark said with respect. They had just watched the entire fight since the Konoha nin had gotten there and were very impressed with the blonde with being able to keep up with a Bankai, even if Sasuke was holding back, most likely because Orochimaru was there. Did you see just before the lightning exploded? Yoruichi asked him with a serious face. And he had watched the boy, young man pull on his hollow mask at the last second by relinquishing one of his hands, which caused the explosion in the end. Yes. He has control over it, that's a good thing anyway. Stark mentioned as he watched Naruto being carried away with the girls worrying over him. Come on, we better hurry. We have places to be. Yoruichi said with a frown as she wanted to see more the blonde. Right. Stark agreed before the both simply vanished. The next day, Konoha was on its way to recovery from all of the damage it had sustained from the last invasion. Shinobi of all ranks had been working 24/7 doing what they could to help with the repairs that certain parts of the village had taken most damage due to the main fights that had taken place. Never mind the mostly destroyed forest which Yamato had to rebuild using his Mokuden Jutsu. Gaara and his siblings had taken their shinobi back as soon as they needed to prepare their own village for any future invasions, as they knew with Akatsuki still around that anything is possible. Gurren and Tayuya had been taken to the Anbu jail cells without the resisting, as they knew this would happen, but they had wanted to speak to Naruto when he woke up, which Tsunade had said she would make it happen. Kurenai, Yugao and Anko had gone home to rest since they live in the same apartment, as since they worked together so much they found it easier to live together if something important came up. Kurenai had told them she now had her own Zanpakuto and it revolved around illusions, which didn't surprise the two kunoichi, although Anko felt slightly jealous that her friends had Zanpakuto and she didn't. Team 8, Ten and Guy had all gone back to their clan compounds to help with the repairs that would no doubt need doing, while Tenten and Lee had to go to their home as they didn't have a clan to go back to. Sakura had gone with Tsunade back to the hospital to start with the healing that would need doing for the shinobi that got injured in the invasion. While Jiraiya also went to the hospital just to make sure Naruto had been alright and checking up on Tsunade, knowing she was worried for Naruto despite him not being in danger. Kagura though hadn't left Naruto's side for a moment. She had slept on his hospital bed while he remained unconscious, as she didn't want to leave him yet after just thinking he may have died in the explosion from Sasuke's attack. But Naruto hadn't woken up at all. Until now. Hospital. Naruto's room. Ringed violet gray eyes groggily opened ever so slowly as they were blinded by the light from outside. Opening them fully now adjusted, he noticed one thing about the room he was in. White. Every fucking thing was white. The hospital. Naruto spat out in hate. What caught his attention next though was a yawn and some shifting on top of him. Looking down, he was greeted to the sight of red hair. Kagura, he asked himself, not expecting an answer. She said as she stretched on top off of him, unknowingly pressing her breast into him, making him groan. Looking up, she saw the Rinnegan staring back at her. Naruto-kun, she shouted as she hugged him tightly. I thought that Sasuke was going to kill you when he launched that attack at you. Naruto chuckled as he hugged her back while stroking her hair. You know I'm tougher than that, he said with a joke. And you know I'll never leave you, there's too much for me to do here. Kagura pulled back before laying one of the most passionate kisses on his lips that left him breathless, before she smacked his head. Don't ever run off and fight such a dangerous battle ever again, you make me worry too damn much, she said with a smile. Naruto chuckled as he pulled back also. No promises, I'm afraid, he said with a smirk. Kagura looked up at Naruto with a confused look. How did you actually survive that attack from Sasuke anyway? Naruto sighed and looked up at her. I told you all about my inner hollow thing, right? He asked her and received a nod. Well, in the last moment as I saw it was going to explode, I brought out my hollow mask, which makes me stronger so that it helped to defend me against the attack, he said, making Kagura chuckle. What? He asked, confused. Kagura just shook her head. Saved by a mask? What has this world come to? She asked rhetorically while Naruto also chuckled. Kagura just chuckled and shook her head. Well, what's going to happen now? She asked him. Well, I got a letter from Mei the other. She needed help training the new Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananan Shu, he said with a smile while she raised an eyebrow. So we're going to Kiri then? When? She asked. We're not going anywhere, he said, making her look confused. You're going to go, he said, making her wide-eyed for a moment. What? Why me? She asked, looking puzzled. Because you'd be the best at teaching some people how to use Zanpakutos, he said, making her look shocked again. Yeah, apparently they all have Zanpakutos and the only one who can do vigorous training is you. Besides, you can't scare any guy, they will learn better from you, he said with a voice full of confidence in her ability. Kagura sighed and gave a nod of her head. Fine, I'll get going soon, but Tsunade wanted to see you about the two sound nin who want to speak with you, she told him, causing the boy to raise an eyebrow. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I'll see her later. For now I'm busy, he finished with a mischievous grin that actually turned Kagura on. Oh really? Doing what? She asked innocently while trailing her fingernails across his chest. Naruto chuckled and pulled her against him. I think you know. The next thing Kagura knew was that she was underneath him. Quote, now you're talking my language, laughed Kagura while hoping that the hospital staff doesn't hear them. Then again, getting caught is kinky. Later. Tsunade. Office. Tsunade was sitting behind her desk waiting for Naruto. She had heard he had woken up a few hours ago, and other than being low on his chakra, he was perfectly healthy, which, if she was honest with herself, completely stunned her. From what she saw of his and Sasuke's battle would have led any normal person in hospital for days, and if you're unlucky, you may never leave the hospital. When she thought about the blonde's strength though, she realized how much he had been holding back in the tests. Despite everything though, she hadn't felt more proud of him before by becoming so strong, and yet in some ways she knew he would face people stronger than him out there, and it was worrying. A second later, the opened revealing a fresh Naruto, who now in his battle clothes with his twin Zanpakutos at his waists. Kagura said, you needed me? He asked as he sat down in front of her. Yes, I did. Something has come up. By the way, where is Kagura? She asked. And it was a good question too, as the blonde and redhead, or as she liked to dub them, Chibi Minato, and Chibi Kushina, well, they were always together. I had to send her to Kiri, the Mei Terumi. The Mizukage had asked for me or her to help train her new swordsman, and she's more suited for teaching. I can't scare men like the way she does, he said with a shiver at the end which brought a smile on her face. I see, that's fine. Anyway, we have two people from Sound, one called Gurren and another called Tayuya, no surnames, she said, reading them off a piece of paperwork that laid in front of her. They wanted to speak with you, something about joining you, she said with a smirk. Joining me? He asked, confused. Yes. Tayuya has a Zanpakuto like yourself and knows the only one who can give her the proper training in them is you, and she says that being with you, fighting the good fight, will give her a home. She paused as she saw Naruto thinking over it, possibly thinking over the possibilities of having someone else with him. Of course, he had thought of creating a group or possibly his own village. Giving a nod to Tsunade, she carried on. Gurren is basically in the same boat. She has a unique bloodline called the Shoten, and she knows you're capable of using this element. She also feels the same way as Tayuya. Naruto thought about her for a moment. If it was true and she could use that element, she would be extremely helpful with working with him. While he could use the jutsus for it, he never had the full capabilities of it, and partnering up with someone who does, well, the possibilities were endless. Naruto gave a nod and said, I'll see them tomorrow. For now I need some rest. What cells are they in? Tsunade gave a nod and wrote the cell numbers down before handing it to him, which he pocketed. Thanks, but for now I need sleep, he said as he stood up. Before he could get to the door though, Tsunade stopped him. Naruto. Naruto turned around to see the smiling face of Tsunade. I'm proud of the man you have become. Your parents would be proud. Naruto smiled at her gratefully. That comment by Sasuke had cut deep, where he honestly wondered if they would be ashamed of him or not. Thank you, Tsunade, that means a lot, he said with a smile before he left. Just another busy for Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Thanks for listening. In the next part. In the meantime, please leave a review. I would love to hear your feedback, especially if it helps me improve the overall story.